Great to see so many people here this morning, and welcome. Glad to have you. We're going to start off this morning with our esteemed director, Sarah Parker-Pauley.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission and members of the public. It is fantastic to see so many of our citizens here this morning. And as the chairman said, welcome. All right, so as always, I'll provide a few updates since our last commission meeting. And it has been another very busy season, as you can imagine. This is really for Commissioner Harrison, who I didn't. I'll put yours in at some point in time, but I'm afraid you could always beat me on this one. So I do spend a lot of time in meeting rooms, but every once in a while, Commissioner Harrison, they let us out for a little enjoying of the resources that we spend so much of our time stewarding. So this was just taken the week before last down near Athens, Texas at the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And I actually got to be guided by the gentleman who runs the Share Lunker program down there. So I had a pretty good guide, and I actually thought with this 5-pound bass that I might be the winning director until the director in Arkansas, Austin Booth, pulled out an 8-pounder, and that was that. But anyway, it has been a busy travel season and meeting season, both at the Southeastern, then just last week in Spokane, Washington at the North American Wildlife and Natural Resources Conference. Also attended the National Wild Turkey Federation meeting in Nashville. And so lots of good conversations and meetings going on around the country on very important topics and shared priorities. So the last few commission meetings, I continue to suggest that we are still showing a lot of progress. And I really, really, really hope that at the next commission meeting, I can say we got it over the finish line. But just continue to have great gratitude for Senator Roy Blunt and his leadership for Recovering America's Wildlife Act, which would provide very critical funding to state and territorial fish and wildlife agencies and tribes. To implement state wildlife action plans, which are focused on species in decline. So this is just an opportunity really to thank Senator Blunt and his team. They're doing all they can to get this critical piece of bipartisan legislation over the finish line. And since the last time we had another fantastic trout opener, many thanks to our incredible staff across the state for bringing home yet another successful opener to the people of Missouri. So I was able to travel down to Bennett Spring with House Majority Floor Leader Dean Plocher and Representative Jeff Knight, and then we met up with Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe and Representative Tim Taylor. So appreciate Ben Havens, who is the hatchery manager at Bennett, and his team for just really doing a fantastic job as always. Ben was spending the morning answering questions from different media outlets just on the importance of this day to so many Missourians. Tag sales for opening day was impressive indeed. A total of 5,884 tags were sold between all the parks, with the highest number of tags always going to Roaring River because of that amazing community. And of course, they let the kids out of school down there. And my favorite part is that they bring hot coffee around to all of the anglers. So Roaring came in number 1 at 1,493 adult tags, 314 children's tags for a grand total of 1,807. So, fantastic day, March 1st. Next up is just a brief update on the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA. We are working with the governor's office and the legislature on several department projects within the American Rescue Plan Act. Unfortunately, currently, 3 of the 5 projects have been removed by the House of Representatives, but we do hope to restore them in the Senate. Currently, the Columbia Bottom Conservation Area levee setback and the One Health Lab remain. The House removed ARPA funding for the Shepherd of the Hills Visitor Center, Little River Conservation Area bridge replacement, and the nursery drainage improvements. Funding was removed for several other projects that the governor had supported, and so we do believe that there's a good opportunity that the Senate might restore some of those funds and those projects. All ARPA state and local funds must be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and spent by December 31st of 2026. So we have a number of staff awards that I love this part, just really to mention and make sure that the commission is aware. First, I want to recognize 4 MDC employees who were recognized by the Conservation Federation of Missouri very recently at their annual convention. Laura Conley, who I think is in the house, maybe. I thought I saw her earlier. Hi, Laura. Congratulations to Laura, our Science Center chief, who was Wildlife Conservationist of the Year. Mike Leahy, Natural Community Ecologist, was selected as the Professional Conservationist of the Year by CFM. Ms. Heather Feeler, hi Heather, congratulations to you, our Communications Branch Chief, as Conservation Communicator of the Year. And finally, Justine Gardner, our Forestry Section Chief, the Conservationist of the Year. So a huge congratulations to those MDC staff. We also had 2 other employees recognized for their exceptional work, also very recently. Last week at the Ducks Unlimited State Convention, Conservation Agent Nick Bomarito of Lincoln County was awarded Missouri's 2022 Waterfowl Officer of the Year. Congratulations to you, Nick. And last week at the North American Wildlife and Natural Resources Conference, Private Lands Program Supervisor Lisa Potter was presented the Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever's Conservation Service Award for her distinguishing contributions to wildlife habitat conservation efforts nationwide. These staff awards are a continued testament to the exceptional work that MDC staff do daily to manage and protect our fish, forest, and wildlife and provide opportunities for our citizens to enjoy them. So congratulations to Nick and to Lisa as well. What do you think about this lunker? The fact that he doesn't look like he's struggling that much to hold up this amazing, yeah, Jennifer just mentioned she weighs what that fish does. So the department congratulates Jim Dane of Pittsfield, Illinois for snagging a 140-pound, 10-ounce paddlefish March 18th at Lake of the Ozarks. The latest record breaks the previous record of 140 pounds, 9 ounces, so he won by just an ounce, so that's exciting. Dane said it took him at least 20 minutes before he ultimately got the fish in the boat. And after getting back to the boat ramp, Steve Henson of Bonne Terre, who happens to hold the Missouri state record for the river carp sucker, was in the area and mentioned that Dane should get in touch with MDC, and I'm glad he did. So he contacted our Camden County agent, Tyler Brown, who then advised him to go to Tom's Slaughterhouse in Montreal to use a certified scale, et cetera, et cetera. Lo and behold, here he has this amazing monster certified. His paddlefish is the 2nd state record caught in 2022. So this is, and Bruce Drecktraw, where are you, sir? Did you raise this baby?
Hard to tell. There's a chance.
There's a chance. She looks vaguely familiar, maybe? I don't know. Many thanks to the many MDC staff and volunteers that made the 2022 MONASP tournament in Branson yet another success. Partnering with Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation, the department hosted 4,342 student archers from 218 schools across Missouri. The event offered both a bullseye tournament with over 3,000 archers and a 3D tournament with about 1,270 archers, with some archers competing in both. 124 teams competed in the bullseye, 80 teams in the 3D. Those archers ranking in the top 10 for their division, as well as top-ranked schools, will be eligible to move on now to the National Archery in the Schools program. So we had over 17,000 people attending this tournament. So just a huge congratulations to our staff, to the foundation, to the many volunteers for just an amazing event. Boone County Nature School. We're very excited about the progress with our Boone County Nature School. Last week, every single elementary teacher in the Columbia Public School District spent half a day of professional development on place-based education, but they also, as part of that, got to come to the Nature School site, and it was just a great opportunity to share with the teachers about all of the opportunities that the Nature School now and certainly in the future will provide to them. In addition, all 100 secondary science teachers from the district were at the Nature School to learn about the opportunities available to them as well. It was a huge hit. It was even rumored that a teacher caught 50 fish in 90 minutes. It's in the South Pond, in case you're wondering, Steve Harrison. All right, finally, teachers put up the first 10 new heavy-duty tents to get ready for camps, and so I'm just incredibly grateful, Kevin Borsinko and Central Region staff, the education staff, so many folks helping to get the Nature School ready. It's already ready, we're already using it. Legislative field trips. Staff continue to engage with legislators in the field. The issue of timber harvest was brought up a few weeks ago during a hearing at the House Conservation and Natural Resources Committee, specifically concerns about clear cuts. So staff leapt to action to create the opportunity to take legislators on site and share information, educate them about regenerative cuts, how they're used, and how MDC manages our land's timber. 8 elected officials joined Jake and Ozark Regional staff for an overnight trip, complete with presentations from 2 University of Missouri feral hog specialists, an elk tour at Beck Ranch, and a timber tour at Sunklands Conservation Area. And we heard very positive comments from those legislators about all that they learned at those field trips. It is prescribed burn season, and staff have already started work on scheduled prescribed burns on conservation areas throughout the state. Prescribed burning helps rejuvenate native grasslands, control invasive species and unwanted woody vegetation, and improves brooding habitat for wildlife such as grassland birds, quail, and wild turkey. At this time of year, our staff start watching the weather daily to find just the right conditions to burn. Just this week, staff were able to complete a much-needed burn at Shoal Creek Education Center in Joplin on the extremely rare chert glades. And that's a picture of this burn here, so thank you to staff. We are so grateful for those who participated in the Share the Harvest program this year. Thousands of Missouri deer hunters donated 242,774 pounds of venison, including over 5,000 whole deer. We are so appreciative for the participating meat processors throughout the state who grind the donated deer into ready-to-use packages for families in need. Since its inception in 1992, the Share the Harvest program has provided nearly 5 million pounds of lean, healthy venison to help feed hungry Missourians. What a great program. Culling operations for 2022 wrapped up at long last week. I would love to give a huge debt of gratitude and thank you to the many staff that spent long hours in cold blinds and transported deer and collected samples, worked with landowners, packaged samples, and entered data, plus the many other tasks that it takes to pull off this monumental effort. Tentatively, 3,054 deer were taken during culling efforts across the state. There have been 30 CWD-positive culled deer, and there are just under 250 culling samples that are still pending. For the year, over 32,000 total deer were sampled for the 2021-22 season, with a total of 84 CWD-positive deer. Feral hog update. We continue to make good progress on eliminating feral hogs from the landscape in Missouri. I want to highlight the aerial operations that have been conducted the last few months. Our close partners, USDA, APHIS, have allowed Missouri to utilize their regional helicopter for the last few months, and it's been a good test of the status of the elimination effort in Missouri. We continue to receive reports from these aerial operations, flying over the same territory as last year and finding this year fewer hogs on the landscape. So here's one instance. At Mingo Duck Creek Conservation Area, that's traditionally always been a location that produces a lot of opportunity for aerial crews to remove hogs. They found only one feral hog to eliminate. They've continued to report these types of deflated numbers as they've flown much of the affected area, so great progress continues to be made. As spring approaches, so do many opportunities for the public to engage with the outdoors. MDC staff are gearing up for a spring and summer filled with Discover Nature fishing classes, kayak workshops, hiking events, and much more. I want to wish good luck to all Missourians who are enjoying spoonbill snagging in Missouri's rivers and lakes. Snagging season opened March 15th and is always a staple of Missouri fishing and is a testament to the long hours that MDC staff have spent raising and releasing spoonbill in our waters. And I cannot wait. I'm still waiting to hear my first gobble, Dr. Mike Hubbard. You've been hearing him for the last several weeks. You're in a little bit better location, but I know that staff and many Missourians are anxiously awaiting opening day of spring turkey season and so many other opportunities to engage in the outdoors in the spring. We have been busy traveling to the regions for our spring regional meetings. Topics have ranged from local projects in the regions to discussions on statewide priorities for the department. We've had excellent discussions and really are enjoying being back together face-to-face with our staff during these important times together. So look forward to the remaining schedule of those regional meetings. And here I was going to talk about the fact that we just welcomed 20 new conservation agent trainees to start their 6-month training session, but we had the opportunity yesterday after our executive session for the agent trainees to come up, not only meet the commissioners, but they barraged you with a series of very insightful questions, and it was kind of fun to see you all on the hot spot for a change. So congratulations to our agent trainees, just delighted to have you aboard. And as always, I finish up with just a few notes of MDC's history. On March 14th, 1938, Georgia White was hired as the state forester. And since 1947, the Georgia White State Forest Nursery near Licking, Missouri, has offered Missouri residents seedlings for reforestation and windbreaks, erosion control, and wildlife habitat. Today, the nursery grows more than 60 species of native trees and shrubs and sells more than 2 million trees annually. On March 24th, 1959, the commission authorizes acquiring land at Taborville for prairie chickens and grassland wildlife, which now falls in one of the department's Tier 1 priority geographies for grassland work. On March 16th, 1971, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service reports they are unable to continue the urban fishing program. The commission then orders the department to take over the program. Over the last 5 decades, the program has expanded throughout St. Louis, Kansas City, and many other communities, and includes both warm water species and trout fishing opportunities in the winter. The program provides tens of thousands of Missourians with a close-to-home fishing opportunity. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, that is my report. Are there any questions?
No, ma'am.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'll just move on to the next item, and it is my pleasure to introduce the next 2 speakers. I believe it has been Commissioner McHenry who has been asking me for the last number of months, when do I get an update on the department's Inclusion and Diversity Initiative? And at long last, Commissioner, it is today. I am delighted, and so it's going to be a 2-part presentation by Chris Kennedy, who more than a year ago was selected as the department's assistant to the director for inclusion and diversity. That is a new position for the agency and part of the reorganization. Chris has a long history with the department, serving over 25 years, primarily in fisheries. He was the fisheries supervisor for the Southeast region most recently, but we are so delighted to have him in this new role. He's going to be providing an overview of the Inclusion and Diversity Initiative, but it really intertwines with our community conservation framework. And so also delighted to have Bill White, who's served even longer with the department, over 34 years. It's amazing. Bill has been so instrumental in so many of the department's efforts, but particularly serving as the Community and Private Lands Branch Chief, and very instrumental in the creation of our community conservation framework and our strategy. And so he'll be following up just to talk about that framework and how it really fits in with the Inclusion and Diversity Initiative. So without further ado, gentlemen, take it away.
Good morning, Commission and members of the public. Happy to see you all this morning. Are we ready? There we go. It is my privilege to come to you all and give you all this inclusion and diversity update for the agency. We have been very busy over the last over the last year, and I want to encourage you all. This is a quick presentation, so if you have questions, feel free, and we're happy to provide more information as needed. There are two things that I wanted you to principally walk away with, and that is we are not the first, and we are definitely not alone. Best that I can tell, inclusion and diversity has been at this agency's, the forefront of this agency's objectives since 1978. And since that time, all of our directors have thought about inclusion and diversity and contributed a fair amount of resources to advancing it within the constituents that we serve and within the agency itself. The other thing is we are not alone. Our director faced many of the same pressures that previous directors have faced when considering inclusion and diversity, but in 2020, things really got intense and in a variety of ways at a variety of levels. And first, when we think about what's occurring in society, and I don't have to go too much into that. You can turn on the news to see our communities calling out for more inclusive and more diverse services. But not only that, at the state level, our governor has called all 16 state agencies to implement strategic actions that will lead all of our agencies to a more diverse workforce that mimics the state population and more inclusive services. Not only that, conservation agencies across the nation have been concerned about how do we improve inclusion and diversity as we reach our constituents and as we protect the resources of the state. And so our director has the privilege of addressing this issue from a variety of fronts, and it has been an amazing ride for me over the last year and a half. Commissioner Eckelkamp, it was, I really appreciated your comments to the agents yesterday about strategic planning and the importance of the strategic planning. And I immediately thought about this slide here and the North American model of wildlife conservation because it essentially provides the basis for many conservation agencies' strategic planning efforts across the nation. And I wanted to highlight some of the 7 principles that are contained within that model. First of all, the model is not a monolith carved in stone. It's a means for us to understand, evaluate, celebrate how conservation has been achieved in the United States and Canada, and to assess whether we are prepared to address the challenges that lie ahead for our conservation agencies. Private ownership of wildlife is not allowed. Wildlife resources are owned by the public and managed by government agencies for the benefit of the public. At the core of this tenet and the North American model as a whole, it's a public trust doctrine, a Supreme Court decision which, as noted by the Wildlife Society, establishes a trustee relationship of government to hold and manage wildlife, fish, and waterways for the benefit of the resources and the benefit of the public. And so as I go and as I talk about these 7 principles, please think about how inclusion and diversity flows through all 7 of these principles. Commercial hunting and the possession or sale of wildlife is strictly prohibited, with some exemptions such as fur buyers and commercial venison farming. Whether with legislation or via regulatory processes, the public shall have the opportunity to shape management policies. In North America, wildlife may only be killed for non-frivolous reasons, such as for food, fur, and self-defense, and to protect private property. As wildlife do not recognize international boundaries, they shall be managed cooperatively between neighboring nations and states. Science shall be the guiding principle in development of wildlife regulations, as it provides a vastly superior management structure when compared to management based solely on public opinion and anecdotal evidence. And the Boone and Crockett Club says number 7 this way: Public access to wildlife, regardless of social or economic status, including hunting, fishing, and trapping, is a right of citizenship. It is also fundamental to conservation because people will value what they have access to, and what has no value becomes neglected. This access fosters individual stewardship and provides the funding necessary to properly manage wildlife resources in a sustainable manner. Commissioner Harrison, I thought about your comments yesterday about in the 70s and how you were lucky to see a deer. I thought about in the 1930s when ecosystems were dramatically devastated and really seeing any form of wildlife was a rarity. And I really contemplated on how these 7 principles have really turned wildlife management, wildlife resource management within the state of Missouri around. And it's evident but by the sheer number of activities that our citizenry can participate in. The 7 principles also are aligned with our strategic approach within the agency. And this is not only true for those 7 principles, but it's also true for inclusion and diversity. As we think about taking care of Missouri's nature, connecting people with nature, maintaining the public trust, inclusion and diversity, if you read it closely, is embedded in all of these strategies, important for the fulfillment of our mission. So in this day and age, I think it's important to start off with definitions. It's amazing to me how we can use the same word in many cases and have vastly different interpretations of what these words mean. And I wanted to start with the word inclusion. And it is a specific reason why we started with inclusion. It's the most important thing that we can do as an agency. We need to think about it as we try to work across racial lines, gender lines, and different identities. But it's even more important as we think about the variety of disciplines that it takes to implement ecosystem management within the state. It requires that we work together across our branches and across our disciplines. And so essentially, it's creating an environment where any individual, group feels welcome, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate, having a voice at the table and being heard. And I'm very proud of members of our public today that have come to listen and to have their voices heard as well. This is a part of this conservation process that we value tremendously here at the agency. What is diversity? It's, you would think that we all embrace what that word means, but in honesty, being honest, most people, when they think of the word diversity, they think of somebody that looks like me. And I'm sorry, that's not the definition of diversity. Diversity equals everybody. And this is a concept that we embrace fully here at the agency, because as we attempt to manage the ecosystems that we manage, diversity is an indicator for how healthy our ecosystems are. The more diverse they are, the more species richness that's contained in these habitat types is really an indicator of how robust and sustainable the ecosystems are and what we're trying to provide. And so what is it when we think about it in this social capacity? Each person is unique and recognized for their individual differences, much broader than race, much broader than gender. Once again, we need to ensure that we have diversity of disciplines and diversity of branches to do the good work of conservation. And so why is this important? First of all, it's part of our agency standard. It's embedded within our mission. Our goal is to provide superior public service. That superior public service cannot be provided without inclusion and diversity. We will not achieve our conservation goals without inclusion and diversity. It is our responsibility when you think about our strategic direction and our mission. Our goal is to ultimately impact citizen ethic and to maintain the conservation support that we are so privileged to have here in Missouri. It gets right down to why are we one of the greatest conservation agencies in the nation? It really derives from the sheer support that we have from our citizenry, and as a result, we have amazing funding to do the work of conservation. A little bit more information on the business case. Why is this important? And these aren't things that I'm making up. These are actually researched and proven in business. And we want to increase and have better business performance. Inclusion and diversity leads to increases in productivity and employee satisfaction. We have better decision-making, decreased employee turnover. We can minimize discrimination and bias within our agency. And we also improve our agency reputation or our brand with a variety of communities and citizens within the state. We've talked a little bit about our agents class. This is what we like to refer as our Brady Bunch picture of our new agents. We're very proud of this class, as you all have mentioned before. More on the business case. 67% of job seekers say that diversity is important when considering job offers. 66% of executives agree that diversity, equity, and inclusion are a key driver of financial performance, and 45 entities that embrace inclusion and diversity will notice that 45% higher innovation revenues exist for those who don't. And the one that always sticks out in my mind, the Center of American Progress estimates that workplace discrimination costs businesses $64 billion annually. And I was talking to our General Counsel, Jenny Frazier, about what does it look like in Missouri. Roughly about $80 million are spent on discrimination cases just here in the state of Missouri on an annual basis. So how do we look forward to moving the needle within the agency? We've been basically operating in 4 principal areas: informing and educating, measuring and assessing, executing, and modeling. And I'm gonna go down through these 4 really quickly for you, but we've embarked on a series of discussions primarily with our leadership. This is not something I've done alone. I have to thank all of our staff, all of our branches, because they've truly embraced these concepts and have started speaking to them, to their staff. And so we've had a series of trainings, staff workshops, very intense leadership discussions, which have helped guide our inclusion and diversity efforts in the future. The old fisheries biologist in me can't get away from measures. I think, and here in this initiative, we embrace those measures as well. We use those measures to tell where are we today as it pertains to inclusion and diversity. What do we look like as it pertains to our staff demographics? We also created an inclusion and diversity survey so that we could begin to evaluate how inclusive is our agency culture and our staff. And then we've also started looking at our outreach services. Who do we serve? Who are we reaching? Who are we missing? Who do we need to target in the future to really broaden out our support and secure our financial funding for the future? I could give you a whole list of things that we're doing in the realm of executing, but I think the one thing that we're doing here recently that's that I look forward to the most is our Director's Inclusion and Diversity Council. And this is a group of staff, roughly about 50 staff from across the state, across the variety of divisions and disciplines that will help guide our efforts into the future. Once again, this is not something I can do alone. We have a variety of staff that believe in this initiative just as much as I do, and I'm thankful to them for wanting to contribute their time to advancing inclusion and diversity within the future for the agency. And so the ultimate goal is to have an action plan created for the agency within the next year and begin implementation of that plan. And we're also modeling. I've spent quite a bit of time working with other state agencies like Public Safety, like Department of Workforce Development, and helping them advance their inclusion and diversity initiatives. And I've also been working nationally with other conservation entities to help advance their inclusion and diversity initiatives. And so we definitely are not alone. And what are we trying to, what do we want to look like? What do we want this to ultimately evolve into? An agency culture that's inclusive of everybody. Staff demographics that looks like the citizens that we serve. Staff that are comfortable serving any citizen, no matter where they live, no matter what they look like or their identity. We want staff to accept the responsibility, that it's everybody's responsibility. Once again, it's not something I can do alone. This has to be something that's driven by all of our staff and all of our leaders. And back to your point about strategic planning, one of the main goals is to have those intentional strategic actions. And I'm going to stop there, open it up for questions if you have any, not particularly right now because I want to give Bill a shot to come up and talk about our community conservation efforts, as it's a fine example of what intentional strategic actions look like on the inclusion and diversity front.
First off, good job, Chris.
Excellent
The
job.
presentation, well done, and I think you kind of covered it, but this initiative is both internal and external.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. And so there's a considerable amount of alignment that's occurring behind the scene between inclusion and diversity, relevancy, community conservation, operational excellence. And so with inclusion and diversity, I'm principally focusing on the culture. My efforts are mainly for internal purposes, but they should feed right into our relevancy initiatives that'll be forward coming in the future and our community conservation efforts. So they're definitely intertwined internally and externally.
And then Jessica's working on relevancy, is that
Yes, she
correct?
is, and she will be presenting at some point in time, maybe this year, later this year, yeah.
And then you have a survey out right now, is that correct, or is it?
Yes, we've conducted a survey. We had roughly about 1,100 of our 1,400 employees that filled out that survey, so there was quite a bit of interest and good return. It's now in the hands of some of our researchers, some of our researchers and science staff, and they're busy evaluating that data, utilizing it to develop a baseline as to where we are as it pertains to inclusion. And hopefully that'll develop into strategies that we can utilize with our staff to improve it over time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Chris. That was a super job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good morning. So using a process that considers equity, inclusion, and diversity, the department is undertaking a strategic approach to community conservation by prioritizing where we will work. We asked 3 regions to pilot a framework, and lessons learned from that pilot are guiding efforts in the rest of the state. Community conservation is part of our comprehensive conservation strategy, which guides our work on public and private land related to habitat management. Our community conservation prioritization process will use a GIS model like this map to help guide decision-making. Our statewide GIS model for community conservation is complementary to similar efforts at the national effort, with organizations such as the Nature Conservancy and EPA. An example is illustrated here from the American Forest Foundation Tree Equity Score Model. The model shows in orange where more tree canopy is needed in portions of Omaha, Nebraska to bring their tree equity score up. A tree map of American cities is often a map of income and race. That's because trees often are sparse in low-income neighborhoods and some neighborhoods of color. Ensuring equity tree cover across every neighborhood can help address social inequalities so that all people can thrive. Research shows that trees can help address human health issues like air pollution and increasing temperatures. Our process has produced a similar model. And our model will be statewide. We are using 5 GIS data sets to build the statewide model. Race and income come from the 2019 census. Tree canopy cover, which again has known impacts on human health. Land cover, which speaks to the amount of impervious surfaces, and public access to nature. Each region can then add local data sets to fine-tune the model. For instance, Kansas City region used a data set of walking, biking, and equestrian trails in Kansas City. The end results of the pilot are illustrated in the Kansas City region map. The red area is Tier 1, or the highest priority area in the region to work in, followed by the yellow Tier 2, or the second highest priority areas, and then all other communities not fitting into Tiers 1 and 2 will be Tier 3, and Tier 3 is shown on this map in green. Our aim is not to refuse service to any community, but to prioritize where we will work proactively and offer the highest cost share rates in the highest tiers. We're now in the process of taking this to the other 5 regions. So what will this look like when we implement it in the regions? Much of the work will be working proactively to engage new audiences and partners, which we may not have worked with in the past. An example comes from Kansas City, where we are working with a longtime partner, the Heartland Conservation Alliance, and new partners like Build Tribe, Cornerstones of Care, and Full Employment Council to set up a conservation jobs corps aimed at minority and disadvantaged youth. Another partner, illustrated on the left, is Mo Hives, and the Hive stands for honeybee hives. They use the hives as an introduction to the importance of pollination in minority neighborhoods and focus much of their effort toward native plants and native pollinators. So Mo Hives and the Job Corps have teamed up, and they're working together to convert vacant lots in Kansas City to native plants to place honeybee hives in. We're working with Mo Hives to take this concept to other cities in the state. We will continue to provide technical assistance and financial services to various community projects. This might include stormwater management. On the left, you see a bioswale, which slows down drainage from the parking lot by filtering the runoff through native vegetation, or on the right, the stream stabilization project. Both of these are in Springfield. Pollinator plantings are very popular, no matter whether it's a big city or a small town. Tree plantings too, from St. Louis on the left to Eminence on the right. Another growing effort is invasive species eradication. Educational workshops and field days, family days, are also key. And the importance of these educational opportunities are shown in a recent survey of Missourians that are helping guide our relevancy efforts. This graph from the survey shows that urban Black African-American respondents are either somewhat or very interested at least 50% of the time in participating in all but the last 3 of the listed activities. Some other key takeaways from the survey illustrate the potential for educational efforts as well. For instance, educational activities may be more effective among urban residents. Urban 18 to 34-year-old residents show more interest in more outdoor activities than any other group. And urban Black residents have lower levels of trust for the Missouri Department of Conservation when compared to other groups. I want to end my presentation by featuring a project we've started in the St. Louis Public School System called Green Schoolyards. Now, our project has just begun, so I don't have photos to show of it, but this is a series of photos from a similar project in Chicago. Many of our schoolyards and larger school systems are paved like the one you see here. So we are taking those and converting the pavement to native plants, trees, and pathways. Keep the skyline of the buildings in the background as a reference. And the next slide is year 5 after the conversion. And this is year 10. So we're hoping to take this beyond St. Louis public schools and go to some of our other schools and some of our larger cities. So our strategic approach to community conservation will allow us to target and prioritize important communities while maximizing department support. It also steers us to work with new partners and communities that we have not worked with in the past. And just like our successes in priority geographies or quail restoration landscapes, our success with communities will rely on building local relationships so that together, with partners and communities, we can make a positive impact. Community conservation is just one of the efforts the department is engaged in to connect Missourians with nature more Missourians with nature than ever before. If conservation and nature are not relevant to a broader base of Missourians, we risk losing the support for and the value of our treasured natural resources. And Chris and I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mark.
I want to compliment you. Talked to Kathy Gates the other day.
Yes.
Yeah, and you met with her, I think, relatively recently, wasn't it?
Yes, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and very complimentary. She's with Deep Roots, which is an organization that started out as, basically a native plant initiative, and then they kind of rebranded into Deep Roots. And I think, was Stacy with her too?
Yes, Stacy Stelk.
Stacy, yeah. So anyway, good job, and yeah, congratulations. Glad you're doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any items that commissioners wish to remove from this? If not, could I hear a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Before we get into the Regulation Committee, I'd like to introduce Tom Westhoff. Come on up, Tom. Tom's with the Missouri Trappers Association and a former employee of, what did you do when you were here?
The last 8 years, I was a PLC,
Okay,
and 20 years before that, I was an agent.
okay. Thank you. Welcome to you.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to discuss this. First of all, the association sent in a letter opposing this. Has everyone had a chance to look at this? Okay, good. It'll save me a little time in covering some of those points. First of all, we are in favor of the extension through the month of February, and we are opposed to the extensions into March and April, which I'll call the spring season, and then in the fall, the August through October 15th. So we're opposed to 2 of the 3. We favor the February extension because the animals are still prime and usable. Some of them may be deteriorating at that point, but there's still a possibility that the fur will still be able to sell it or utilize it in some fashion. The first question I really have is the science behind this. There's a lot of southern states that have year-round open season on raccoons, and we don't know if that's really helping the turkey population. So I don't know, has anybody done any surveys or questioned those people? Is it helped by having a year-round season? I don't know if MDC has done any surveys with these other states, but as far as I can tell, the population continues to drop on turkeys in those states that still have the open seasons. The other thing is being a former employee, I've been to probably 100 programs given by biologists, turkey biologists, quail biologists, grouse biologists, and none of them have ever pointed to predators and saying, if you reduce predators, your bird population will go up. MDC has always promoted habitat over control of predators, and this is kind of to me, a major change if we're going to allow the harvest of predators during the spring and summers and falls. Has there been any surveys on how many people actually participate in these March seasons and fall seasons? As MDC,
I do not know. In this state, of course, we haven't had the opportunity because they don't exist. Yeah. But in other states, some of this is more recent, like in Arkansas. But I don't think it's been on the ground long enough for any kind of good survey information to come out of it.
I was part on that about states that have year-round trapping. To your knowledge, has that made a difference?
To my knowledge, the year-round trapping commissioner at a population level has not resulted in increased populations at large scales. There has been research that has shown intensive trapping efforts on smaller scale areas, a few hundred to a couple, 3,000, 4,000 acres, can result in increased ground nesting bird populations. It's a short-term impact and needs to be continued, but it has been shown that it can, on a small area, have those kind of impacts. But it has not been shown to be able to do that at a very large landscape level scale.
does everyone understand pelt primeness? You know, when the animals are usable. I want to make sure that everyone understands that. Another reason we're against the March, April, August through October meeting is ethics. I want to read you a quote that I found, and it says, "Conservation means wise use, and the killing of one game animal over another and just disposing of them is not wise use when we have the means to harvest them." Oops, wrong quote. Sorry about that, wrong quote. Yeah, you'll hear it again. Okay. Once you caught an animal, it is your responsibility to see that that animal is taken care of properly. Remember, conservation means wise use of our natural resources. Letting an animal spoil from lack of attention would be a waste of the resource and an irresponsible act. Does anybody know where that quote came from? That's the MDC website on trapping. So catching these animals in March and disposing of them to me, is not wise use. It's not good conservation. So, okay. Also, the Trappers Association has talked about this, and there's a bunch of us here today. We've always believed that there's a time to harvest animals and a time to protect them. And any game animal, when they're pregnant in family groups, I think should be protected rather than harvested at that time and then just disposed of. So. Okay. Looking at it from a little different perspective, from the non-hunting perspective, non-hunters out there, there's way more of them than there is of us. And I don't know how they would feel about MDC promoting the harvest of pregnant game animals. I just don't think that's something that we should be promoting. And also for the anti-hunters, anti-trappers. I think this just gives them more ammunition to say, these guys, just trap randomly and disposing of animals that shouldn't be harvested at that time of year. Also, as an alternative, I hate people that just complain about stuff and don't have an alternative to it. So I'm trying to give you a couple alternatives here to these two seasons. Currently, the trapping season is 2.5 months long, November 15th to end of January. If the February thing passes, then it'll be 3.5 months. And I think that's plenty of time to harvest animals. Raccoons, according to the Mammals of Missouri, have a home range of about 1 mile. So on these smaller scales, if you could say you own 1,000 acres, if you can expand that out for 1 mile, you'll effectively reduce the population of those animals on your farm or property. So, of course, that means getting permission from the adjoining landowner or having them trap. But I think you can be more effective at reducing them if you just eliminate that home range. You'll reduce that population for a period of time. They're going to move back in eventually. But I think for a year or so, you could effectively reduce that population. So if you can do that during 3.5 months, I'm not sure giving them another 1.5 months is going to make that much difference. So another alternative would be to have a trapping clinic on your property. The association, we met last weekend, and we've got 6 clinics scheduled to show people, but anyone can have a trapping clinic or trapping seminar on their property year-round. The director has the authority to authorize those. So if you have property and you want to have one, we normally have them in September, October, but basically you could do them anytime you want. Not only control some of the predators on your place, but encourage more trappers, which we really need. So that would be another possibility of having trapping clinics on their property. Let's see. Kind of a long-term thing would be, having more teaching clinics like this around the state. We need to write more articles, get people to be using fur more. The people around the world really like fur. It's just the government, all this stuff going on has stopped them. People of China, Japan, Russia, they like our fur. We just can't get it to them, and they don't have any money to buy it. But we need to have more information out there on the use of this, not just for garments, but for wall hangings, crafts, or whatever, and try to promote trapping more overall. and this could be done by MDC. MTA needs to write more articles, outdoor writers need to write more articles about it. We just need to promote it more, and I think people would like it. So I guess what it comes down to is, are these two proposals, regulations, worth the potential of lack of respects of support from both hunters and non-hunting and non-trapping public for the few landowners that would be participating? And I don't know how many landowners will be participating, but I don't think there'll be that many. I've talked to several, and they say, yeah, it's a good idea. Are you going to do it? No, I'm not going to do it. So I don't know actually how many landowners will be participating in this. So, and this is a quote I started earlier. Remember, oops. Okay, conservation means wise use, and the killing of one game animal over another and just disposing of them is not wise use when we have the means to harvest them at a time when they are not breeding, raising young, and are potentially usable. So that's really what we want. We think it's unethical, and we don't think it's necessary because we have the time to do that during the regular season. So, any questions?
Can we open it up for questions? Margie?
Tom, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your members for coming today. It's great to see you guys here joining us. For my background, I poked around a little on your website. I saw you guys are very active on social media and you have representatives across the state. But for my background, could you tell me how many members do you have and what has that trend looked like over time?
Currently, we are probably 800 members, roughly in that? 754. 754, okay.
Count every single one, yes.
The last several years, it is trending down because of the low fur prices. Sure. At one time, we had thousands of members. You know, when fur prices were up, there were more people actively out trapping. So it has been trending down the last several years since the fur market crashed about 6-7 years ago. Yep. Yes?
Do you do educational programs of any kind? I mean, you mentioned clinics,
Yes.
but I think about fur trapping, kind of, you know, a lot of that actually developed our state, going back to a guy named Francois Choteau, who was a French fur trapper that actually founded Kansas City. So I mean, literally the city founded on the roots, and he was trading, you know, furs with the Native Americans that lived in the area. And so I go back to the 200 years, quite frankly, of fur trapping that's been going on in Missouri. And I think that educational component of that is kind of important. Do you do programs like that at all? I think it's a way to people to better understand value in that.
Yes, we do. We had our board meeting last Saturday. We have 6 scheduled for this fall, scattered around the state. And we do other programs too. We're doing one Saturday in Herman at the youth event. We'll be there displaying traps and talking about trapping.
It goes back to the whole history of all.
Yes, we go back, show them the furs, let them ask questions.
Right.
But yes, we do a considerable number of events around the state.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Sure, I've got some questions. First off, Tom, thanks for your service to the agency. First question, I was just curious, when you were a private landowner conservationist, did you work with landowners that had certain species they were real interested in enhancing?
Oh, yes.
And so did you do that to help them target those and that sort of thing?
Targeted species they wanted to manage for, that's correct, whether it's deer, quail, turkey, whatever.
Okay. Well, and the reason I kind of asked that question, you know, being on the commission, it's been interesting. And one of the things we say is it's easy to be disagreeable, but not be disagreeable, disagree, but not disagreeable. And I open up this booklet here, and this is from one of your members. It says, I no longer belong to Missouri Trappers Association because 700 members, 40 fur buyers are worried about to tell the 93% of landowners how to manage property. And this person here is very narrow-minded in their approach to this. You know, they're, rather than trying to be agreeable and work together. And, you know, I looked at this here. He said, number 4 says, why is this proposal on private land only? If nesting predators are a detriment to ground nesting birds, why would MDC also want to on all of them? Well, you know, that's an example of where we're trying to be diverse, you know, in trying to look at the small group of landowners that, you know, want to look at that, you know, and The research, there were some areas here, you were mentioning the research available. And I've quizzed Dr. Hubbard a lot about wore him out, because as I was looking at the literature on some of the things on turkey management, and as a commission, we've gotten more letters on complaints or unhappy with a declining turkey population than I've seen in my tenure on the commission. And, so we try to look at the diversity of how to represent different people. But the research on turkeys, there's real good research up to about 1998, and then there's a huge gap all the way to 2016. And the question I asked Mike, and he can chime in, he said, well, we thought we had it all figured out. And, we didn't. And some of the nesting predator things that are there actually is some excellent stuff on waterfowl and the effectiveness on managing nesting predators. Also, Dr. Grant Woods, which is a master conservationist, he's demonstrating some work in southwestern Missouri on that. But one of the things that you mentioned, I've been trapping avidly since I was a kid in the 70s, which we don't have information back that far. Pelts were bringing $35 a piece, back in those days. It was pretty amazing. And then when we look at the harvest information that we have on trapping, on selling pelts, we were selling about 250,000 pelts in 1994, 1995, 1996. Had a peak in 2012 that was mentioned in this letter, and then they've gone down to about $12 or $14. And in the last, I think, 7 years, we've been harvesting less than 20,000 raccoons a year. So the comments you make on if we're effectively trapping, probably wouldn't be having this discussion, because if you look at the Archer's Raccoon Index, you see it's it keeps going up, but then all of a sudden it gets higher, you start seeing spikes in it, which, Mother Nature actually has a more cruel way of managing populations, usually with distemper, whenever it gets higher too. And, distemper, happens throughout the year, pelt or non-pelt. But, some comments on this. First off, I love to trap. I love seeing people that are very passionate about what they're doing. But we also look at 93% of the respondents to this were actually positive, which is kind of interesting. That reflects the number of percentage of private landowners in the state that not necessarily are going to be doing this, but want to have that option available to them. And so that's when we try to bring together diversity and match those people that have those interest in it too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt raccoon populations are just way up there and way out of control. But I guess part of our concern is if we get a lot of distemper, and we probably will if we get a drought year, then you get to the point where there's not that many raccoons, and they are still classified as a game animal. So, I mean, we want to try to keep this in balance. We want to help those turkey hunters, but we think we can do it, during the season when it's more ethical and still usable fur. This is basically our point.
I wish we were demonstrating. That'd be great. If we were, I said I wish we were demonstrating that, like back in the 70s. When I was a kid, we went raccoon hunting this year, and I think we killed 11 in about 3 hours. Running dogs. And back in the 70s, if we got 1 or 2 all night, was pretty amazing. So.
Well, hopefully fur prices will come back someday, and this.
That would probably, and
go away.
it's
That's our best
interesting.
hope, but-
Economics really drive that a lot on fur pricing. The other things we manage for wildlife, are not necessarily monetary incentive, but fur very much is. Rich, when I was talking to Rich, he was showing me a bobcat he had sold for $412. And boy, that really makes that a very desirable species to get out and hunt. Anyway, thank you again.
Our point is, it's just, we think we can do it during the regular season. We think it's unethical to kill those animals, and we don't know how many people will participate to actually do it. So we just don't feel it's the right thing to do at this time. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Tom, thank you very much. Sure appreciate it, and thank you guys for coming in. We're going to take a short break.
Sure.
And we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Director Polly. Is that a little better? Now I got a green light up here. I'm good to go. Before I begin my regulations information, I do want to take an opportunity here, just due to happenstance that Tom is in the audience. One of the things that Tom has been very active in addition to the Trappers Association, is rough grouse in the state of Missouri. It's a passion of his on an individual level, and it's a professional passion of his as well. And due to his leadership and the leadership of a lot of other folks over and around the Herman area, we have just completed a few months ago the third round of reintroductions of rough grouse back into the River Hills area. Hopefully, through a lot of hard work on partners' perspective, as well as our staff in that area, we've created habitat that is now suitable for rough grouse. And with all the work of staff to move 300 grouse back into that part of the state, we hope to see a resurgence of that population here in Missouri. But just because Tom happened to be here, I thought I'd take that opportunity to recognize him for all that hard work, because it has been a labor of love, but taken years and years of dedicated effort to get us to this point. So I just wanted to mention that to the commission, because it is something we are greatly appreciative of. Commissioners, the Regulations Committee met on March 3rd to review recommendations to establish harvest and permit quotas for the 2022 black bear hunting season this fall, season dates and permit quotas for the 2022 elk hunting season, and recommendations to establish seasons and limits for migratory game birds and waterfowl for the 2022-2023 seasons. I will present each of these recommendations for commission consideration today. Mr. Chairman, before I begin my formal report, recall that in December, the commission voted to approve recommendations to amend fur bear hunting trapping regulations. Following the commission's initial consideration, the proposed rulemakings were filed with the Secretary of State's office for publication in the Missouri Register, which initiated a 30-day formal public comment period. A total of 722 comments were received, of which 675, or 93%, were in support. Those comments, along with the department's responses, are included in the final orders of rulemaking for CSR 10-7.450 fur bears, hunting seasons, methods, 3 CSR 10-8.510 use of traps, and 3 CSR 10-8.515 fur bears, trapping seasons, and methods, beginning on page 7 of your packet. Mr. Chairman, unless the commission has any questions or concerns, I request approval of final orders of rulemaking with no changes to the original recommendations.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. So moved.
And second?
Second.
Discussion.
No, other than just we appreciate the comments from Tom and the individuals that were here today and took time out of their schedule to be with us, express their concerns. We do appreciate that. I think we've listened. We've also listened to what we received through the normal comment process also.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that too, really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and talk to us. I mean, that's how this system works effectively, so we get to hear the things. And I'm sure you can appreciate from the discussions, we've thought through this very thoroughly. But keeping in mind that, A, this is only limited to private lands of individuals that so choose to do that. And then 93% of the respondents were actually positive, which kind of is an indirect reflection of the pressure we're having on us on trying to find solutions to our turkey, and not only our turkeys, but our other ground nesting birds. I think there's about 27 species in the state that can have an adverse effect on that too. And so there's some other aspects of it that come into play.
Margie?
I would just share, since my time on the commission in August, the amount of communication we've got from folks concerned about turkeys, but others. And we've listened, and we want to be a commission that is responsive to our citizenry and all citizenry.
So Mike, can you lay out what our options are at this stage?
At this stage, commission, you can do one of three things. You can accept the recommendations as presented. You can modify the recommendations. Of course, you could table these as well and think that through, or you could withdraw the recommendation from consideration and not move forward. Those are your three options at this stage. If you chose to table a recommendation, due to the time frame that we are under with, once the 30-day, or the official public comment period ended, and for two of these rules, it ended on February 17th, you would have 90 days to take an action on that, or those rules will become null and void. So if you chose to table, which I'm not advising one way or another, you would probably have to have a special session to finish it out, or the rules will have to start over.
Okay, are there any other comments, commissioners? Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. All right. Commissioners, all recommendations brought forward today establish seasons, dates, and limits which are not subject to public comment period and will be filed as final orders of rulemaking. The first set of recommendations for consideration establish the 2022 black bear hunting season harvest and permit quotas. As a reminder, the black bear hunting season framework, including season dates and permanently established in 3 CSR 10-7.900 black bear hunting season's general provisions. Per this framework, the 2022 season will run October 17th through the 26th, or until the black bear management zone specific harvest quota is reached. Harvest and permit quotas will be presented annually for commission consideration. If approved, these orders of rulemaking presented today will be effective April 15th of 2022. There are no harvest or permit quota changes recommended from last year's inaugural season during which 12 black bears were harvested. Recommendations for harvest quotas for the 2022 black bear season are for 20 black bears in Bear Management Zone 1, located in southwest Missouri, 15 black bears in Bear Management Zone 2, which is in southeast Missouri, and 5 black bears in west central Bear Management Zone 3. Recommendations for permit quotas for the 2022 black bear season are for 200 resident black bear hunting permits in Bear Management Zone 1, 150 resident black bear hunting permits in Bear Management Zone 2, and 50 resident black bear hunting permits in Bear Management Zone 3, with at least 10% of all black bear management zone specific permit quotas awarded annually to approved resident landowners whose qualifying property is in the specific black bear management zone for which they are applying, as established in the black bear hunting season framework. Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.900 black bear hunting season general provisions and 3 CSR 10-7.905 black bear hunting seasons application and draw process as described.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
When is the draw on this, Mike?
I believe they can start application process in the month of May.
Month of
And
May.
then the draw will be shortly thereafter, usually in early June.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Commissioners, on page 17 and 18 of your packet, you'll find orders of rulemaking for 3 CSR 10-7.705 elk hunting seasons and 3 CSR 10-7.710 elk application and draw process with an anticipated effective date of April 15th, 2022. These rulemakings set the 2022 elk hunting season dates as October 15th through the 23rd and December 10th through the 18th for the archery and firearms portions respectively, and establish a 2022 permit quota of 5. All permits will be awarded to qualifying residents as defined in the Wildlife Code, and at least 10% of the permit quota will be awarded to approved resident landowners whose qualifying property is in Carter, Reynolds, or Shannon counties. Here today to provide additional background and details on these recommendations is Aaron Hildreth. Aaron has worked for the department for almost 6 years in the position of certified biologist. He received his BS in Fisheries and Wildlife from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and his MS from the University of Kentucky, where he studied the physiological effects of the reintroduction process on the elk that were translocated to Missouri and Virginia in 2012 and 2013. He has worked for the Idaho Department of Fish and Game as a regional population biologist and for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in partnership with the National Wildlife Research Center, researching various ungulate damage mitigation techniques and ungulate diseases. Aaron, I'll turn the podium over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly. It is a privilege and an honor to be up here and to address the commission again, so I'm looking forward to it. With that, we're going to go through a bit of a laundry list of things, so I'll briefly touch on the regulations framework for elk that's already in place, briefly touch on the first 2 hunts for elk here in Missouri over the last 2 years, touch on the biological benchmarks, additional details on the permit quota and season date recommendations that Dr. Hubbard just mentioned, and then kind of conclude with an overview on how we currently do population monitoring and a new camera project that is starting up. So with the existing hunt zone is Carter, Reynolds, and Shannon counties. The entirety of those, the only area excluded is the refuge portion of Peck Ranch, so about 12,000 acres there in Carter County. Permits are only able to be distributed or awarded to Missouri residents. Those who apply would need to be 11 years or older at the time the permit is awarded, or at the time of the opening date for the archery portion. And permits are all assigned by a true random lottery, so no preference points, no way to draw. There is a $10 application fee to apply, $50 permit fee. Applicants are limited to 1 application per person per year. No group applications, and there is a 10-year sit-out period if you are drawn for a permit. So not if you harvest, but if you're drawn for a permit, there's a 10-year sit-out period. Starting last year, on the landowner side of things, any resident landowner with 20 or more acres within any of those 3 counties can apply for a landowner-specific allocation of permits. Those permits, at least 10% of the allocation would go to landowners meeting that description. That permit would be valid anywhere within Carter, Reynolds, or Shannon County, excluding the refuge portion of Peck Ranch, and the same application fee, permit fee, and 10-year sit-out period apply for landowners drawn for those permits. As with all permits, they're non-transferable as well. Methods of take for elk are the same as for deer. Only antlered elk are available to be harvested on these permits, and an elk that meets that qualification is just any elk with 1 antler that is at least 6 inches in length or greater. Similar to our provisions for during the youth deer and turkey season, if a youth is drawn for this, they can have a Hunter Ed certified adult accompany them to assist on the hunt, but obviously that adult may not harvest the animal for the youth. And as with deer and turkey and black bear, telecheck reporting is also required. So again, that's just a brief overview of the framework that already exists for elk here in Missouri. We look at the 2020 hunt. So this was the inaugural year. We had 5 hunters, and at the end of the day, we had 5 very, very happy hunters. As I like to think about nostalgia and history, the bull pictured there in the center is actually one of the 2012 original release bulls. So really cool to see that history and that animal appear again. When we look at 2021, again, we had 5 hunters, and at the end of the day, 5 very, very happy hunters. Also, just for history and nostalgia purposes, the bull pictured there in the center is one of the true original release from 2011 bulls. So that was an 11-year-old bull when he was harvested. I can attest that he was on Peck Ranch for a good bit of the rut and was running a pretty nice harem at the time. So that bull was harvested off of Peck Ranch later in the season, but it's really cool to see that history and those animals still doing very well. When we fast forward to, again, thinking more history, in 2013, 3 population benchmarks were established for elk hunting, and these would kind of trigger the initial hunt or opportunity to possibly pursue elk here in Missouri. And those were a population of around 200 elk, population growth rate of 10% or greater, and we do that over a 3-year period, and then a bull to cow ratio of 1 to 4. We look at the first of those benchmarks, at least thinking back to the initial hunt, a population of around 200 individuals. We look at where we are today, we have a population that is cruising right along. When we look into the very near future, so say sometime within the next 5 years, we're likely going to reach that 500 number, and 500 is our target population goal for elk in this area. As we have that population creep up, that means that we're going to get to pursue new opportunities for elk and expand permit opportunities through time. We look at a breakdown of where we are for the population currently. I'm fast forwarding to June 1st. We do a population estimate for elk based on their biological calendar year. Elk tend to start dropping calves around June 1st, so that's what we base the number off of. We estimate before calving this year, we'll be sitting at roughly 257 elk, and with a rough sex and age breakdown there. We look at the next population benchmark of around 10% population growth per year. This is why we take a 3-year average. Things bounce around a little bit. So you have really high years, you have really low years, and you have years in the middle. When we take the last 3 years, we're sitting at about a 14% annual population growth rate. That really is cruising right along at a very healthy rate for elk. So that's a really good sign. We look at the last of those, which is a bull to cow ratio of 1 to 4. Here we've seen a bit of a decreasing trend. That's not a cause for alarm. So we do have a goal of stating that we want roughly a 1 to 4 ratio, so or 25 bulls per 100 cows. You see a noticeable decline, and if you look there, you also see that we expect to see a decline again come next year before it starts to rebound. Again, not a cause for concern, and it does not mean that we have a decreasing population. This is a weird issue that's kind of surfaced because of a difference in primarily survival rate. Our adult cows, figure 24 out of 25 adult cows are going to make it through next year. They have a survival rate of almost 96%. For adult bulls, it's 75%. So only 3 out of 4 bulls are making it through to the next year. When you have a bad calf year, like in 2018, and you have cows that are basically not dying, with bulls that unfortunately just have a lower survival rate, it creates that decreasing trend because you're adding more cows every year. As calf numbers start to increase, that ratio will eventually start to also creep back up into the low 30s, which is a good thing. We believe that we have plenty of bulls right now to still have an effective breeding, and make sure that cows are bred in an efficient manner. We're not worried about that right now. Again, we see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel in the next 4 to 5 years. That will creep back into the low to mid 30s. So that's kind of the brief overview on those population benchmarks and where we sit now. And again, those benchmarks are in relation to the ones that we had in place for the initial hunt. As Dr. Hubbard mentioned, our recommendation to you this year is to continue with 5 antlered elk permits for this year, with at least 10% of those permits going to a qualifying resident landowner. The application period would be the month of May, and we would have results out to the public no later than July 1st. We look at hunt timing. We know, similar to the reason that we love to hunt turkeys in the spring when you can hear them gobbling their heads off, hunters love to interact with critters that are talking to them. Elk hunters are no different. They want to hear those bulls screaming their heads off in the woods and making the hair stand up on the back of their neck. We also want to make sure that we're maximizing population growth rate right now. When we look at the peak of breeding season, it's here. We get this from calving data, so the day a calf's born, we can back calculate how long that gestation period is, figure out when they were conceived. This is that peak range. We also know that elk bugle their heads off here from late September, and I've heard bugles into February. So they're very talkative here. We want to stack the archery portion of that first opportunity as close to the peak of breeding season to maximize that opportunity for interaction. And then we know from GPS collar data that by early to mid-December, elk are incredibly well distributed on the landscape that they utilize here in Missouri. And so not only are the critters, but also the hunters able to be spread out and maximize quality opportunity. Because of that, is how we basically arrive at the season dates that we have. So again, the same permit is valid for both portions, assuming it wasn't filled in the earlier portion. The archery or the 9-day archery portion would be October 15th through the 23rd. The 9-day firearms portion would be December 10th through the 18th. So that's our recommendation for season dates. As I mentioned, we have a population that is cruising right along. That means that antlerless harvest opportunities are likely coming down the pike sooner rather than later, and so stay tuned there within the next year or two for more developments on that front. But we'll have an opportunity to start truly managing that population and providing recreational opportunity to Missourians because we have a healthy, happy elk population. Move on now and talk about population monitoring. So we use two main tactics to manage or to count and survey elk here in Missouri. The first is a fairly simple method, but it is effective. It's from the ground. These are our fall cow-calf surveys. So we basically drive around, find elk, count the number in the group, do composition, so how many bulls, cows, calves, and age class for the bulls, figure out what we have. Very straightforward, but as the population grows and expands, it's going to take more and more time and effort to figure out where all the little haunts they're trying to hide in are at. The other method is from the air, and last year I had the opportunity with a couple of the commissioners to experience this. Sometimes they're really nice and polite, like in this photo. We really like those opportunities. They're easy to count, they're easy to comp. Also, nice opportunities. Lone bulls, open spot, really, really enjoyable. Also enjoyable, you get a little bit of snow on the ground, you've got a group of elk in the open, easy. Then it starts to get maybe a little more difficult at times. So there's 3 bulls in this photo, it's still pretty easy. But, and here's a cool opportunity or example. This is a glade that work's been done on, and it's just honestly really cool to see elk utilizing that glade. So we go to other opportunities, and this was this group was taken, one of the commissioners was with us last year. There's actually 16 elk in that photo. Granted, we've already spotted these elk, but it gives you some idea of, even with the helicopter, as you're cruising along at 50 miles an hour, it's not always easy to spot these critters. And then that's from this year. There are 13 critters in that photo. So as you can see, it ranges from easier to more difficult. And this is why we like to have lots of tools in the tool belt to assist us in this, because you never know where they're going to be hiding on any given day. With that in mind, and wanting to create additional tools in the toolbox as we think about a population that's, again, continuing to grow and continuing to utilize new areas, sorry about that, we have a new camera project. It uses a combination of space to event and time to event. So think of time-lapse feature and motion activation from a trail camera to capture images. These are unbaited camera locations, and through some modeling that honestly is sitting here somewhere on some days, it's a really cool technique to assess and take advantage of new science and trying to find new ways to model populations as they continue to grow and move around the landscape. There's also some potential for cool applications and use for data that's collected in this on other species. So say, for example, maybe with spotted skunks or harder to detect species, we're really interested in what new tools we may be able to pull from this project. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Aaron, thank you so much. Could you refresh us on the lottery totals for the 20 season and the 21 season?
Yes, so there were just over 19,000 applicants in the inaugural season, and there were 9,700-ish last year. Seeing that dip isn't uncommon, so
Absolutely. Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, the first season, all 5 were harvested with firearms, if I remember that correct.
That is correct.
And then you had archery in one case, maybe, I remember.
2 cases in
2
this past
cases of
year.
archery in the second season?
Yes.
Okay. And the only other thing, and I may have asked before, I know from, you said tools in the toolbox in relationship to determine the count. Drones, has that been considered?
So that is something that we've discussed. There are more restrictions with that and more limitations in our ability. We had the opportunity to interact with some of the hog folks actually this past year while doing the elk survey and their use of drones for finding sounders, and that was good. Part of it is as their range is continuing to expand and the truly large geography and the volume of it that we need to survey, there's some limitations there that we're trying to think through.
Okay, thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
I mean, I envy your job, by the way.
I do too.
It is a fun one.
Yeah, you're very fortunate. Hey, just curious, that population of the bulls, you said about 25% mortality rate on the bulls, is that what you said?
That is correct.
'Cause the
And
damn hair.
about a 3 or
This woman's
4% on the
fault,
cows.
as always.
That is correct.
Big number.
It-
It is a big difference, yes.
So how does that compare to western states? I mean, it seems like, and that seems like a really high number on the bull mortality. I'm just curious, is that comparable to the western states, or?
So we have, Missouri is just very different in that hunting pressure for western states is going to impact their survival noticeably more than us. Also, whether it's winter, we just don't have a winter, so to speak. So there's no mortality associated with weather extremes here. Predation is very minor, and on bulls is basically non-existent. It may be honestly still a touch higher than the West if we ignore the hunting side of it. Reality is here, bulls just don't seem to fare into truly old age as well as I would have honestly anticipated. And we don't have great answers for that.
Do you ever get an opportunity to do postmortem stuff on them to investigate what the cause of death was on them?
We do. When we had GPS collars on a larger portion, we tended to have a greater percentage of those in hand. Now that research project, we've gleaned tons of information from it, and so we've moved beyond GPS collars. We do still have a very engaged public that lets us know when we have mortality events. Unfortunately, sometimes by the time you get even to 48 hours after postmortem, determining cause of death is very difficult. By far the leading cause of mortality for elk in Missouri, and it is primarily geared towards between 6 months and 2 years of age, is a parasite called brainworm or meningeal worm.
Meningeal.
Thankfully, it doesn't seem to impact older animals as much. It seems like if they're going to succumb to it, they tend to do it early in life. But every year we still end up with, I think this past year, probably in the 7 to 10 range, reports from the public of a bull that's at least 2 years old or older that has perished from unknown causes, because usually, bulls, more so than even cows, inhabit the farthest spot from humans they can find. Those animals aren't recovered in a timely fashion to determine cause of death for all of them, at least in recent years.
So, I mean, on the meningeal worm, I mean, does it seem to target the bull calves more than the cows, or? Just curious.
At least anecdotally, from a pure percentage standpoint, males do seem to be, since I started, males seem to be more heavily targeted than I would say females. With that said, the first 4 to 5 years, including the reintroduction years, females, younger still, but seem to be targeted more. Since I came on 5.5 years ago, males seem to be hit more heavily.
One more question, and I think something we're very interested in, but, Arkansas CWD problem with that elk area there, and I'm sure you don't want to ask the question, but, I mean, I'm thankful we haven't seen that in our elk population, but I was wondering what our testing surveillance was down there, and how many animals we testing, that sort of thing, Aaron?
Absolutely. So we do test every single elk that we get our hands on for CWD, regardless of age. So it could truly be a calf that died immediately after birth to the hunter harvested animals. We take samples from as many as we can. All 10 of the hunters that have been fortunate enough to be drawn and harvest for an elk, we have taken CWD samples from all of those. Since elk were reintroduced, we've sampled, I believe it's going to be just over 300 elk for CWD here in Missouri. And if
That we've tested that many?
we have.
Wow,
So
that's
again,
wonderful.
we don't care about the age. We'll take a sample from any elk. Also during the managed deer hunts that occur on Peck Ranch, staff there collects CWD samples. Obviously, elk utilize areas outside of just Peck Ranch, but elk still spend a significant amount of time, or a significant portion of the elk spend time on Peck Ranch, and we test depends on the year and how the hunts went, but 30 to sometimes as many as 70 or 80 deer a year that are harvested off of Peck Ranch and the refuge portion of Peck Ranch even for CWD. So we
Will
have
you
a-
test 100% of those then, or the deer harvested in the special hunts there?
if the hunter is willing to allow us to
Okay,
take a
yeah.
sample, yes.
And I'm Ben to ask one more question. The Kentucky, are they having similar mortality rates with, the bull, cow, that sort of thing? I mean, it seems like it'd be a similar habitat to an extent. I was just curious.
It is. I will say that I don't know, a lot of their research projects that were going on at the time that I was there have since wrapped up, and while they do have a couple of different research projects going on now, they're geared in a different way. I think the most recent one was from John Hast, and he had a very large sample size that was borderline a census for some areas of bulls that were collared. Hunting mortality was the main cause of mortality for bulls there, but again, they also have a significantly larger population and a significantly higher tag allocation. Brainworm-wise, they have brainworm mortalities. It's not to the same percentage that we have here.
Not the same. It's a host is a snail, I think, isn't it? Or
There's certain species of slugs and snails in the gastropod side of things that can carry it. Deer, we've surveyed deer, and 40 to 80% of the deer that we've looked for brainworm in have it, but of course
No
they're not
effect, yeah.
impacted negatively by it. So we've done genetic work on comparing Kentucky and here and genetic strains of the parasite, and there's a lot of cool work being done. Unfortunately, it's still, there's no silver bullet cure for it.
Thanks for your work on it. It's really great stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.705 elk hunting seasons and 10-7.710 elk application and draw process as presented and described in your regulations packet.
Yeah, motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioners, as you know, the department's schedule for setting migratory bird and waterfowl hunting regulations is governed by a timeline established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Scientist Dr. Andy Radicke is here today to provide an overview of these recommendations. Andy spent his childhood in the Prairie Pothole region in southwest Minnesota, where he developed a passion for waterfowl. His academic training focused on the connections between social and ecological systems and culminated in a PhD in rural sociology and a Master's of Science in Fisheries and Wildlife from the University of Missouri. Andy is an environmental resource scientist based out of the Conservation Research Center here in Columbia. Prior to his current role with the Missouri Department of Conservation, Andy served as a research assistant professor in rural sociology at the University of Missouri. At this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Radicke.
All right. Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Pauly, and general public. It's a privilege to present these recommendations today, and even better to have a room full of people. This is the first time in 2 years I've got to experience this, so I do appreciate that. Before I begin, I really want to make several acknowledgments. I'm presenting, but it's really the work of a whole lot of different folks in our department that help with the monitoring, communications that lead into what we do for waterfowl management in Missouri. Also want to thank hunters. There's more talk these days of citizen science, community science. And you think about it, waterfowl hunters have been doing this for a long time in terms of the number of hunters that voluntarily return their bands. There's hunters that cut a wing off and pluck the tail feathers off of each goose to submit to the Fish and Wildlife Service, responding to our surveys. So it's really a joint effort between citizens and professionals in managing our resource. What I'd like to do today is just go through the federal frameworks, provide a little bit of introduction how the regulatory process works, then get right into webless migratory birds, ducks, and geese. So what we'll be talking about today are the federal frameworks dealing with annual regulations. At the federal level, they establish, and with us providing input, the season lengths, bag limits, and the earliest dates a season can start, the latest date it can end. We can do anything in between. We can have recommendations that are more restrictive, but we cannot be more liberal than what the federal frameworks allow. So if you look at this partnership, we do most of what we do through the Flyway system. We're a part of the Mississippi Flyway. Jason Sumners is the Mississippi Flyway Council rep. I'm the technical section rep for the game bird section. We work at that level with the Migratory Bird Office of the Fish and Wildlife Service. Together, we meet and make recommendations for waterfowl, management plans as well. Those then go to the Service Regulations Committee. So that's different than the Migratory Bird Branch. Each Flyway has 2 consultants that goes to that meeting and provides input. And then whatever goes from that service committee essentially goes up to the Assistant Secretary of the Interior. So then looking at it just in terms of the annual regulation process, and the federal level, there's actually 5 different documents that are published in the Federal Register to get to where we're at today. And so if you just look at it just roughly in the spring, that's when we focus on the planning, the development of the management plans, where the federal frameworks are announced. Then you go in the summer, that's when all the monitoring takes place. Should note the last 2 years, because of COVID, there has been no monitoring to speak of in the breeding grounds. You then get into the fall. This is when the proposed season frameworks and we make the specific recommendations. And then finally in the spring, where we're at today, is where I have the opportunity to present the recommendations to you. And that ultimately leads to the fall hunting season. So again, we'll be talking about season lengths, bag limits, and going from there. And so starting with the webless birds, we'll start with dove hunting. Basically, the federal framework allows, if there's more than 59 million doves, we can have a standard season of 90 days with the 15 bird bag limit. You can see we're well above that with 120 million doves. And so with that, we're recommending the similar season that we've had in previous years, opening on the September 1st, going to the 29th. And then dove hunters can have an extra portion of season, and we recommend, again, similar to previous years, where the extended falconry season would last from November 30th to December 16th. And then the other webless birds, basically the same as previous years. Sora and Virginia rail opening on the 1st, going through the 9th. Snipe opening on the 1st, going through December 16th. Woodcock from the 15th through the 28th of November. Coot the same as ducks. Bag limits the same as we've had in previous years. Turning our attention to waterfowl, I've already mentioned it's really, I guess interesting is not the right word, but interesting presenting recommendations with virtually no data. One of the things that's in our favor is there's probably no other group of species than waterfowl that's more closely monitored. And so we can benefit from the years of monitoring data using the models that have been developed to have a pretty good idea of what populations would be minus a year or two of monitoring data. So looking at ducks, I'll start out with teal season. If the population is above 4.7 million, we can have a 16-day teal season. The predictions were this last year that we likely had a population about 5.8 million, so again above that threshold for a 16-day season. This season has to occur completely within September, opening after the 1st, closing before the 30th with this 6-bird bag limit. We recommend opening the Saturday after Labor Day. We don't want to conflict with Labor Day and all the recreational activities are going on then. And really teal migration starts in mid to late August, goes through early October, and it's really, there's flight days basically. They don't spend a lot of time in Missouri, and so this season really provides opportunity when some of those flights will be going through Missouri. And so with that kind of general perspective, it would be opening on the 10th and closing on the 25th of September. If we turn to the regular duck season, depending on the status of mallards and the numbers of wetlands in Canada, we could either have, if it was really extreme, a closed season, a 30-day season, a 45-day season, or a 60-day season. The season can't open any earlier than the 24th of September or close any later than January 31st. So looking then at those two metrics, the mallard population, it's just below the long-term average at about 8.5 million. You look at the number of Canadian May ponds or the wetlands, they're about 3 million, so just again slightly below. So I want to show you the matrix that you can plug those numbers in. If you look at the yellow, those are the restrictive seasons. So when the combination of ponds on the top versus mallards on the left, if it's low, it would be in the restrictive. You can see there's just a small number of spots where we would fall into that 45-day season or moderate season. Those other cells are for the liberal season. And this year where we're at, we're again well into the liberal season. So in terms of the actual season dates, in 2020, the commission approved using season date formulas for the dates. And we recommend using those formulas again this year. And that would mean in the north zone, opening on the Saturday nearest October 31st. In the middle zone, opening on the first Saturday in November for 9 days, closing for 5, and then reopening for 51 days. In the south zone, it would mean opening on Thanksgiving Day for that holiday weekend. That's really a popular time for hunting. And then opening then on December 7th and going as late as the federal framework would allow. So with those, that would put us at an opening date of October 29th in the north zone, closing on the 27th. In the middle zone, it would mean opening on the 5th, going through the 13th, closing for 5 days, opening on the 19th, closing again on January 8th. In the south zone, Thanksgiving falls on the 24th. That would be open from then to the 27th, closed, then opening on the 7th of December through the 31st. There are a couple of populations we've been watching more closely in the last few years. Scaups one of them. Their population continues to be slightly below average, and because of that, the federal framework calls for a restrictive package. And this is an odd one. This is the one where the bag limit is for 2 for 45 days, 1 for 15 days. And so we're recommending following that framework. I do want to point out, we harvest very few scaup in Missouri. Most of those scaup are harvested in November, so front-loading those 2 birds in the early part of the season matches when they're through here. And we've done this the last couple of years, have virtually heard nothing from hunters, just because we harvest so few scaup in Missouri. The other one that's of concern is pintail. We look at their numbers, they're below average. It's really interesting. You'll notice we have the degree latitude of where they settle. And there's for 2 reasons. One, the traditional surveys don't cover the further north range of pintail. If habitat conditions are bad in the areas they like to nest, they'll migrate further north and they'll be less productive. Recent modeling has showed just even a couple degrees, like say from 53 to 55 degrees latitude settling, can make a huge difference. In the 70s and 80s, we could shoot up to 10 pintail, and at that time they were settling at about 53 degrees latitude. So just to give you an idea of the importance of that. With that, we're recommending a 1 bird bag limit as we have the last year or 2. And so all the bag limits will be similar to last year with 6 ducks overall, 4 mallards, 2 of which can be females, 3 wood ducks, 2 canvasback, 2 black ducks, 2 redheads, 2 mergansers, 2 scaup, 1 pintailed, 1 mottled duck. If you go hunting, are you going to remember this? So now, moving on, we do have the opportunity for 2 special days for veterans and military. It can be 14 days before or after the regular season. It can be in combination with the youth season. And we're actually recommending, similar to the last few years, not offering these days. It's a really difficult decision, but the reasons we suggest this is it would put waterfowl hunting at odds with all the other seasons that we have, ducks, turkeys, deer, fishing. The other thing to think about, waterfowl hunters already can hunt 60 days. So think about that compared to the season length for turkey, deer, other species. And then finally, think about the other deserving groups that might like something similar. First responders with COVID, healthcare workers, the list can go on. So for those reasons, we're recommending not offering that so we can be consistent with the other seasons that we're offering in Missouri. Turning to the other special season that we can offer is the youth season. And again, this can be 2 weeks before or after the regular season. And we recommend doing this the week before when possible, but we don't want to have the youth waterfall season conflict with the youth deer season. So when they do, we just simply recommend having the youth waterfall season be a week earlier. And that'll be the case this year in the middle zone. So for the middle zone and the north zone, we're recommending those dates to occur on October 22nd and 23rd. In the south zone, it would be November 19th and 20th. So turning our attention to geese, the first population of Canada geese is the interior Canada geese. These are the geese that migrate into Missouri. They nest on the Hudson Bay. Again, this time it was forest fires actually that prevented us from doing a complete survey. All small aircraft in northern Canada had to be used to fight fires and deal with that. We did learn for the geese that typically in the range, in the western part that migrate through Missouri, they had a bust in production last year. And we were hearing reports that hunting was a little bit tougher this year with lots of adult birds. If you look at the temperate nesting Canada geese, these are the geese that nest around here in Missouri and on up into Iowa, Minnesota, northern Manitoba. Their population's been pretty stable and large, almost getting closer to 2 million. Now, if you look at Missouri's resident population, the population we see around here, it's been very stable the last several years and much lower than states to the north. And for those reasons, we don't recommend using the full allotment of what we can use for Canada geese. So the federal framework allows for 107 days with up to a 5-bird bag limit. We have recommended slightly fewer days and a 3-bird bag limit. And again, we have a smaller population. As you saw, it's been fairly stable. If you turn to white-fronted geese, actually more white-fronted geese are migrating and providing more opportunity for hunters in Missouri. In this case, if the population for the 3-year average falls below 600,000 and the harvest rate goes above 6%, we would have to be more restrictive. As you can see though, the 3-year average of almost 1 million is well above, and the harvest rates of 4% is below that 6%. So we can continue to offer that standard package. And with that, it could either be an 88-day season with a 2-bird bag or a 74-day season with a 3-bird bag. Now, looking at snow geese. You're all familiar with the conservation order. The snow geese populations for a number of years were really rapidly growing, and so there was concerns. So beginning in 1999, there was the start of a conservation order. So much more liberal opportunities for people to hunt. This is not a hunting season, it's a conservation order. But what's interesting is if you look at the last number of years, when this conservation order started, the population was about 12 million. And the idea was that this conservation order would stay in place until the population would fall to about half of what it was there. And you can see the population is really starting to decline. But what's interesting, this isn't because of harvest. This is entirely because of what's happening on the breeding grounds. And one of it's related to climate change. There's more evidence there's becoming a mismatch of when the geese and the goslings need the forage to grow and when it's available because of changing climate. So those two things are starting to no longer be in sync. And so that's one of the factors that's really making a difference. The last few years, we've had some really tough springs with rains right when the goslings have first hatched. And if you have a cold, freezing rain at the wrong time, it can virtually wipe out the gosling production. And so we've seen, kind of a culmination of some things on the breeding grounds that have affected their population. So with these things in mind, we recommend a 9-day early Canada goose season that would open the first Saturday in October, and then a regular 88-day goose season. And again, that matches that white front framework, if you will. And that would open on Veterans Day, close on February 6th. We don't want to have it open too long because then you start conflicting with the conservation order snow goose opportunity. And this would be with a 2-bird bag limit for white-fronted geese, a 3-bird bag limit for Canada geese, and a 20-bird limit for light geese. So the rationale, it's simple. You have just a goose season. It provides concurrent duck and goose hunting opportunity. And probably most importantly, it provides that late season opportunity when most Canada geese are migrating into Missouri, but without going too late to interfere with the peak times for the conservation order. So with those goose season dates, it would be the early season, October 1st through the 9th, then the regular season, Veterans Day, the 11th through the 6th of February, and then the conservation order would open right after that, so on February 7th going through April 30th. Falconers can have some additional days, and then working with those folks, they like to have those days later, and so we recommend having those dates open on February 10th going through March 10th. So now we can look ahead. As I mentioned, we had no data. Last year it was also troubling. We had probably one of the most severe droughts in the breeding grounds that we've had since the mid-'80s. It's looking better. It's too early to tell. Just heard from the Canadian Wildlife Service right now, they've had more snow this year than they've had in a lot of years. But the downside right now is it's been melting kind of gradually. And if you have gradual melting with dry soils, it's just going to soak in and it's not going to replenish the wetlands. So their ground's snow covered in Winnipeg right now still, and it was going to be 20 below Celsius there this last night. So it's still too early to tell what's going to happen. And I did want to mention the other thing looking ahead. You had mentioned drones for counting elk. We're doing a research project right now at the University of Missouri with the School of Natural Resources and Computer Science of using drones to count and have real-time estimates using machine learning to count waterfowl. And it's been really productive. We're encouraged by the initial results. So our recommendations are basically for my webless birds, the same as last year. For ducks and geese, same as last year, just adjusting for the calendars. And then for falconry, the same as last year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hubbard.
Great presentation. Well done, Andy.
Thank you.
Andy, such a dynamic segment of what we do, so thank you so much for that recap.
Appreciate it.
But I actually have some questions. The work you do is fascinating. I mean, to me, I'm always afraid to duck hunt because I can't identify what all the ducks are.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, but and as Dr. Hubbard knows, I've been reading about everything I can on turkeys, and I'm probably going to drive him crazy, but I can't get any more white hair. You probably can't lose any more, so you could lose some more, Mike.
Hey, there's another alternative.
There's something that jumped out at me. A buzzword in the literature, particularly on turkeys, is adaptive harvest strategy. And as I went through and I was watching your presentation, you know, on all your species of ducks, boy, you had a certain population level that you were looking at. And then you very quickly adapted your seasons, your bag limits, those sorts of things based on what those target numbers are. And I found that interesting because, you know, when you look at reproductive characteristics, I mean, you know, waterfowl has some of the same perils that, you know, turkeys do. But I don't see that type of strategy, not only for Missouri, but for really any state. I mean, but it seemed like some of the modeling work is out there. I mean, is probably more question for you, Mike, but it fascinates me how it seemed like you guys really have this refined and dialed in here, but we're not doing the same sort of thing. And I don't know any state that's doing any changes on that. I'm just kind of curious.
Stay there.
I would actually ask Andy to answer that question, because Andy and before him Dale Humbert were two of the pioneers in establishing adaptive harvest throughout the nation, and it's really focused on waterfowl, and they've applied that mechanism from an estimator standpoint and a reaction standpoint throughout the flyways. And literally, it was Dale and Andy that pushed that, and you're seeing this stuff here that is being used throughout the country and actually North America to modify and set our season structures based on the models developed during adaptive harvest work. And that has been numerous meetings throughout the years with the technical working group and statisticians and scientists to figure out how to create those models, apply those models, and utilize those models in the season setting framework. So it is interesting. It is pioneering, and it is showing the rest of the country what can be done when the resources are applied at the level at which we do for waterfowl in most cases. If you want real specifics on how it works and everything, we could spend hours and hours with Andy, and he could maybe get us,
Yeah, and, it's just not necessarily the form to get into that deep of it, but I kept seeing that. I mean, every one of them, you had your target numbers. You really dialed in on it, and when I look at the history of turkey management in Missouri, I mean, we've always been at the forefront of any other state in the nation, period, bar none. And it seems like some of this modeling stuff is out there to look at that. I just really fascinated by it. I mean, a lot, because, Mike and I's discussions have been, hunter harvest doesn't have an impact, on turkey populations, but then we start looking at the stuff you're showing on, you're adjusting harvest and all kinds of stuff. There's something different there that perks my attention, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And to me, there's a couple of things that really are the beneficial of doing it. I guess the one thing, Dr. Hubbard mentioned it, you're talking about models. So you're putting on the table, this is what we think we know about how the system works. And then by doing that, and then if you have good monitoring data, you can then see, does that match? And are your predictions matching? And then the other really great thing about it is, if you have some uncertainties, you can build those into the models and then see how well those work. And so like in adaptive harvest management with waterfowl, there's basically 4 competing models that every year each one is weighted to see how well they perform. It's density dependence, and then additive versus compensatory mortality. And so by modeling, this is how we think the system works, then we see how the model performs, and we see, okay, the model that it says it's additive mortality. Well, that model didn't perform nearly as well as the model that said it was compensatory mortality. So then you can start weighting and learning through your management. And to me, a couple of things I think are really cool about it. One, it's transparent. You're putting everything on the table that you think you know about the system, and everybody can see the same sheet of music, you know what I mean? That here's how we think the system works. You can identify what those uncertainties are, and you can start to try to learn about those uncertainties through your management. And then through monitoring, you're going to get better, and that's the most exciting part.
Very interesting. I'm fascinated by it.
Thank you.
any additional questions?
Okay,
for Randy?
No additional questions other than,
great job.
appreciate your Minnesota accent. I got you, Breccia, Minnesota.
Soda.
I know it.
Mr. Chairman, I hope you're not going to make me recite all of,
Yeah, would you run through that one more time?
please no. Mr. Chairman, getting on page 19 of your packet, you'll find an order of rulemaking to establish the 2022-2023 migratory bird and waterfowl hunting seasons. Please note that this does include a recommendation to update an incorrect reference in the authority section. I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.440 migratory game birds and waterfowl seasons limits as presented by Dr. Radke and described in your regulations packet.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you would like, I'll move on with introducing our next speakers.
Please do.
Commissioners, at this time, I'd like to introduce Science Branch Chief Jason Sumners and State Wildlife Veterinarian Dr. Sherry Russell, who will provide a brief update on avian influenza. Jason received a BS in Fisheries and Wildlife from the University of Missouri and a master's in biology at Mississippi State. He joined the department in 2008 as a private lands deer biologist before taking leadership of the state's deer management program in 2011. In 2015, Jason accepted the role of Wildlife Division Chief, and for the last 4 years, he's been serving in his current role as Science Branch Chief. Dr. Russell joined the department in 2017 after a decades-long career as a private mixed animal practitioner. She holds a DVM and a Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture from the University of Missouri. And I'm going to turn it over to the both of them to give us an update on avian influenza.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be before you again. You guys have had the great pleasure of hearing from our amazing science staff, and so I will try to be brief, and I recently heard a speaker say when they were attempting to be brief, they were told to be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. So our plan this morning is for me to be brief, Dr. Russell to be brilliant, and then both of us to be gone. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to talk a little bit about background, basic science of avian influenza, what it is, what it means, help you guys understand a little bit of the narrative that is occurring. Talk a little bit about the international and national scope, how did we find it here, and then Dr. Russell will talk about the Missouri situation and our intensive response. So a little bit about the background of influenza. So as we talk about influenza viruses, they occur across a host of species, and they're typically, the nomenclature around the way that they are identified starts with the name, so in this case, avian, and then we hear H whatever, N whatever, and that really is based on the protein structure of the virus itself, and so in most cases now we're dealing with H5N1, and then where it originated, Eurasian, Eastern Asia, those kinds of things. And then further explained by the behavior of the virus. And so low-path avian influenza circulates in populations quite frequently, has relatively low mortality, low morbidity. The high pathogenic version of the virus causes great morbidity and mortality. And so we see very different responses. And so that distinction is very important. So the current strain that is causing impacts in North America is believed to be the H5N1 Eurasian lineage of high pathogenic avian influenza. There is some questions if a newer strain has entered the western part of the country, but that's still yet to be determined. And so why does this matter? It matters because it has pretty significant implications, particularly to domestic poultry. This highly pathogenic strain see anywhere from 90 to 100% mortality. So the disease enters a commercial operation. It has a potential to have very, very significant impacts. It is highly pathogenic. The virus is spread very easily. It spreads very rapidly within these facilities. And then there's great concern as folks from a biosecurity control move between commercial facilities of actually spreading the disease. So when we're talking about avian influenza, there is great concern about the ability or how easy it is even for humans to spread the disease across the landscape, not only the transmission of it through wild birds and domestic birds. It is a globally reportable disease, so any new occurrence or detection of the disease that happens here does get reported to the OIE, and so that information is shared by our federal partners. Certainly has trade implications. Again, as we're moving animals around, the concerns about disease transmission is really challenging. USDA's response when it's found in a domestic poultry facility is culling. I mean, in these kinds of mortality events, there is no mitigation of the risk other than just simply culling and disposing of those animals largely on site. And in this case, HPAI has some, but very, very low zoonotic potential. So the actual opportunity for humans to get it is low. If they do get it, the outcomes are pretty bad. But for the most part, the risk of it being transmitted to humans is pretty low. So we talk a little bit about what we're seeing. So we've been watching this kind of brew across Europe and Western Asia for the last couple of years. It has been causing some pretty significant impacts in the last couple of years. Certainly impacting wild populations of waterfowl, shorebirds, raptors, and real concern in Eastern Europe over impacts to cranes. So a wide diversity of species certainly being impacted by this disease. So how did it get to North America? It was first detected in Newfoundland back in the fall in a black gull, and then in January of this year, a hunter-harvested bird in South Carolina was with the disease detected. So Since January to now, we've had pretty rapid increasing detection of the disease. We have actually identified it in all 4 of the Mississippi flyways that Andy was talking about. Again, first detected in the Atlantic, found in the Mississippi, expanding into the Central, and then more recently detected in a bald eagle in British Columbia, which might suggest that we actually have an incursion that occurred through Russia down through the Pacific flyway. So we may actually be dealing with 2 separate introduction events of the virus into North America. So it's been found pretty much across the nation. You can see the laundry list of states there. We certainly have had a number of detections here, and Dr. Russell will talk about that here in a minute. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sherry to talk about our situation.
So, okay. But I am naturally gifted with being loud. That is a special superpower. Okay, so this map shows you the counties where, as of now, we have detected it in wild birds. I would note that we added 4 counties to the map this week: Jackson, Lewis, Platte, and St. Clair. And we have with the help of our awesome communication people, once or twice a week, we are updating the map and updating the species. So you can find that on our website. If you typed in avian influenza, Missouri Department of Conservation, it'll take you there. There's a lot of ways to get there, but there's a little section I'll show you in a minute where you can see basic information, and then the map is updated. And this is information from the Missouri Department of Agriculture. It is available on their website, and we simply have borrowed it to show you that. So you see that we have it in Missouri, a lot of places. One of the things I'd like to tell you that's important is that we are having very nice model cooperation between the federal partners, then the state partners, and this is everybody's business, which means it takes a lot of cooperation to get information shared and keep everybody feeling like they know what's going on. And you see that in Missouri, on the agricultural side, the Missouri Department of Agriculture is actually leading the effort with cooperation from the feds. And then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has their own way of responding to things on the refuge. And then we are also cooperating with the Missouri Department of Health and Human Services, both as an agency, providing them information and doing some monitoring for them. So our first challenge, which we saw this coming, as Jason said, we knew this was coming. We didn't know for sure what would happen, but we had maybe an 80% likelihood we thought we'd get it in Missouri. And so at the end of January, we started working with our communication team so that we'd be ready, so that we could communicate with our stakeholders smoothly. And so we would all be together. And that included the interagency working group, and it also included the communication public information officers having a working group, which they already had, but we got all ready. And so the first thing we did was we proactively communicated with our rehabilitators, our falconers, and our hobby permittees. And this was with some help inside the agency, getting those lists, and we sent little postcards letting them know, just be on alert, basically. And then, as I mentioned, we coordinated with the other agencies, and we readied a press release ahead of time and did a little bit of content work. So Heather's group really helped us be ready. And we clipped what the website looks like. And underneath, is it safe to eat meat? You will see the map that I showed you and the counties that I showed you, okay? And so we're updating that in kind of a live way. And here's our 2 big messages. One, food safety is not a concern. This is important, right? We do not need to do any damage to our agricultural partners or to our hunting public or any ideas about meat and this virus. And then do not handle sick or dead wildlife. As Jason mentioned, it's considered a weak zoonosis, but that does not equal a no zoonosis. And these birds act neurologic, which means they look pitiful and they look like they're hurting, and the public gets very emotional. And it's important for us not to have a whole bunch of, we got the duck and put it in our bathroom type stuff. Okay, so that's like a real thing. So that's our message, and that we've been like on this message kind of from the get-go. So in Jason's, in science, there's a wildlife health team that you guys know about. And so they've been responding, I like to say we, because it's Andy who does the waterfowl things, and then the wildlife health team, and then myself. We've been responding to calls for sick and dead wildlife. We've had great cooperation inside the agency, the protection division, all the wildlife staff, the front people who answer the phone at our nature centers. All those people are getting calls. You can imagine, right? And once we have press, then everybody's worried about everything, and so there's a lot of that. In the top right, you see Alicia Burke, who's been amazing. We have her in charge of logistics. You see she's wearing a headset, and she's not kidding around here with this. She has experience dealing with our taxidermists and meat processors, which is basically a logistics job, and she's quite interpersonally talented. So she's managing how to get the birds picked up, what to do, yada, yada, yada. And then we have various people who their other job has to do with regular wildlife health, helping out, moving birds. And then we have to sample the birds in a biosecure way, and we have to manage all that just right. And that's happening at the green area just north of here at Ashland. And then now our samplers are going to the University of Missouri, who has really stepped up, as is usual, and getting us turned around really fast, which the Department of Health is really happy about, because then they know, what's happening. And our Department of Agriculture is also benefiting from that fast turnaround. The second piece is this has become an opportunity for us to work with our rehabilitator community. If you remember, I'm sure you all know, we have a World Bird Sanctuary, we have a Lakeside Nature Center, we have zoos, we have a lot of people with birds in collections, right? And these birds are very valuable, and they're very nervous, and so we have done biosecurity consultations. I've mostly done that for the agency, and trying to build bridges there. And that's been important. So far, so good there. This is just a picture of Alicia. She responded to a falconer that had a suspect couple of birds, and so we take that very seriously, because we don't want to be part of the problem. What Jason talked about is moving the virus is a big deal, and in the Department of Agriculture, they take their biosecurity seriously. We take our biosecurity seriously. So that response was to sample some live birds to try to handle it in a similar way as you would to commercial poultry. And I've already talked to you about the rehab interface. The public reports have been very high, and the staff reports have been very high. We've got a lot of volume. Again, protection has done a great job, especially eagles are, as you know, right? It's an iconic species, and so when those are found dead, people get pretty worked up, understandably. So basically, my conclusion, we are going to be fast, and I'm not kidding around. Look at this. This is the last slide. I think we get gold stars for fastness. This is just David Swain, who's like, in my judgment, a big cheese in both avian influenza and agriculture science in general at the USDA lab. And he just says that this is an unprecedented biological impact with this new-ish strain of avian influenza, and I don't want to make you scared and have monsters under the bed, but I just couldn't leave this without telling you, I doubt this is the last we hear of this. So does anyone have any questions?
Just one observation, I think you had a slide with about 15 or 16 counties, I believe it was, that were listed.
Yeah, I think that's probably, to me,
Yeah.
our best, like, that's a visual. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then I look up here, Clay County, you've got a Pelican that you tested.
Yes.
Am I guessing that's Smithville?
It actually wasn't. It actually wasn't Smithville. It was a private property situation with a small
Okay.
impoundment. But I wouldn't say that we don't have, as far as I remember, we haven't had any samples off of Smithville Lake, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you guys know, we just already talked about this today, predators are very efficient at scavenging up bodies, right? Everything. And I would mention, just while we're on that, this is not just avian influenza, so the influenza virus does have the possible impacts on the scavengers, both bird and other mammals. It's really unknown how much this one does. That was not answering your question, Commissioner McHenry.
The large amount of pelicans that are at Smithville Lake, I was just kind of making that
Yeah, I bet.
huge inventory of them.
You're right, there's a huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And editorially, I just love that bird. I love those pelicans. I could look at those all day,
Thank you.
pelicans. I love them. Anybody?
Good report.
Yeah? Yeah. You guys have any questions ever, you call one of us. Okay.
Great presentation. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. No, your time's up. Okay, now we're getting into the fun stuff. Budget. And we have Jennifer,
Not Andrew, not today.
not Andrew today.
Not Andrew
Andrew's not
today.
feeling well.
He's
And
not feeling
so,
well. But we appreciate all of his efforts.
Yes, we do.
Because, as you know, you've got very detailed materials in your advanced commission materials. And just on behalf of administration, our budget team, the branch budget coordinators and branch chiefs, and all of the staff that we have in the field that work their tails off, pretty much 1st of November to first part of January. It's a fast and furious run for folks to bring budgets together. I thank you on behalf of all those folks for your time and attention yesterday. We had an excellent budget workshop.
it's a little
Appreciate your
long.
support. Well, it's not a small endeavor. Conservation is not a small endeavor. So yeah, we try to provide as much detail as possible so you all are confident that we're moving in the right direction and utilizing the resources we are given appropriately. So thank you for your time yesterday. We do appreciate it sincerely. In the interest of time, though, I will say, unless you have questions about the February financials, I think we could just say we've presented the February financials, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, so you have been presented those financials, and so are there any questions? And if not, do I have a motion?
I don't
No?
think you have to
No,
approve them.
that's
no.
what I was
It's
saying, I'm
just-
not going to do that right now.
You were going to say, do I have a moment
Moment.
to proceed with our meeting?
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Please proceed.
Well, I think Jacob is on the agenda next with the next agenda item for the approval of the construction contract, so I'll
Okay,
step away.
so, yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Pauly. I do have the next two agenda items. The first are just some highlights of the status of major construction projects report that's in your advanced materials. So I'd like to direct your attention on the first page under the maintenance and repairs category on lines 5 and 6. Just want to share with the commission that we are in the process of executing the contract for the structure replacements at Four Rivers. And then in the rehabilitations category on line 21 at Lost Valley Hatchery, happy to report that the electrical service entrance modifications, that project is complete. On page 2 of the report, On line 4 at Bilby Ranch, Lake Conservation Area, the parking lot accessibility improvements, that design is a little bit behind schedule. The design is delayed by contract administration duties on the radio tower projects and a design change on the Black Island project. So the engineer that's working on those two projects, because of some additional work they've had to do on those two projects, it's slowed down their progress on the Bilby Ranch project. And then the next line, line 5, at Ray County Community Lake, the parking lot accessibility improvements project, the design is complete on that project, and that is going to be constructed by the regional infrastructure maintenance staff. Next, on line 6, at the Lebanon Forestry Office, the parking lot improvements project, notice to proceed was issued on March 7th, and I'm happy to report that the contractor is making very good progress. And so I'm look forward to sharing with the commission when that project is complete in the near future. In the capital improvements category on line 16 at Three Creeks Conservation Area, the Nature School Pavilion project is complete, as the director shared in her opening remarks, and very happy to have that project completed and being used by the school system. On line 21 at Shell Osage Conservation Area, that pump station project is currently being designed by Ducks Unlimited. I did have a status report from my contact at Ducks Unlimited. They're expecting the next set of deliverables for review in early May. So we're making progress on that project. On line 22, Perry Conservation Area, the range relocation and lead recycling project, that is the next agenda item for your consideration because we opened bids recently. Then on the third page of your report, again, under the capital improvements category on line 5, at Bennett Spring Fish Hatchery, the hatchery renovation project, happy to report that the consultant is making very good progress on the basis of design. We've had several opportunities to work with the consultant and hatchery staff to review those submittals to date. We're expecting their final report very soon, and then in the month of April, the department will be considering their analysis and their recommendations, and we'll be making a decision on the final scope items to proceed with into the design phase. So that is all the highlights I'd like to share on the construction projects. And then in the last page of your advanced materials, there is the infrastructure asset management dashboard. Just want to point out the focus this month is on the panel boards and load centers. And currently, 30% of the panel boards and load centers are past their expected life, with a estimated replacement cost of a little over $2 million. So that's an item that we are keeping an eye on, and that will help inform us on which projects to bring forward in the future as we develop the construction budgets in the future. So that concludes my remarks on the status report, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Going back just a minute, Mr. Chairman, on Bennett Springs, still design, and you're anticipating starting construction at the beginning of next year on that, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then estimate that about a 2-year construction?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
And then just one other question on the infrastructure asset management. You mentioned panel boards. Remind me, is signage one of your assets?
Small signage is not, but the large signs are, or in some cases cantilever signs. They are considered assets that we track.
Okay, so you have some data on that as far as what's out there and as far as your inventory on signage is concerned, so.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to see that at some time. Okay,
Happy to share that.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. The next item, agenda item number 7, is an action item for the commission. It is a recommendation for authorization to enter into an agreement with TriSmith Construction, LLC of Carrollton, for construction of the Perry Conservation Area Range Complex Renovation, Recycling, and Soil Stabilization Project at a total estimated cost of $1,146,450.00. It is further requested a contingency fund of $58,000 be authorized for unforeseen conditions and or other changes necessary to complete the project. Total authorization requested is $1,204,450 $450.00. The engineer's estimate for the project was $1,184,370.00. We did receive 2 bids for this project. Tri-Smith Construction LLC has been in business for 11 years. They have completed previous projects with the Missouri Department of Conservation and other heavy construction public works projects in central Missouri. Infrastructure Management Branch recommends the bid as submitted by the low bidder be accepted.
Motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
I understand, and thank you for the 100 days worth of construction?
Yes, it's a 100-day working day contract, so that means that weather conditions must be suitable.
Right. You
To
make
be counted.
exceptions for that in some cases, okay. And you had about a dozen subcontractors, I believe, you shared?
That is true.
Okay.
And very good MBE and WE
Yes.
participation on this contract as well.
Thank you, Jacob.
You're welcome.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Realty Committee. And she's back.
Yeah, today feels like a little bit of a blue ribbon day for me because it's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to bring recommendations for land acquisition to the commission, so I am pretty excited. The first recommendation for action is the approval to purchase approximately 168 counties in Sullivan County as an addition to our Morris Prairie Conservation Area. I'd like to note that this tract is located within 1 mile of 8 species of conservation concern. We've been talking about RAWA a lot the last few days, and so when RAWA passes and those dollars are available, this would be a great candidate for management activities that would utilize those RAWA dollars. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I present the approval to purchase that 168 acres in Sullivan County.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I see here you've noted doing boundary markings,
Correct.
so that's something we want to make sure we get done as we acquire this piece of land. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes, I would say we probably established kind of a line in the sand here a couple of years ago as we began our infrastructure inventory to say no more acquisitions without without either survey being completed if we didn't have a survey completed like within the last 5 years.
Okay.
So yes, every new acquisition, we are working with consultants, usually contractors, to get our areas surveyed and the boundaries marked at the same time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So both of these, the last recommendation and this recommendation for action, which is to approve the acceptance of a donation of approximately 193 acres in Putnam County, are kind of in tandem projects. Same landowners offered these tracts, but I've talked with the commission before about Indiana bat mitigation dollars that are available through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that are being administered by the Conservation Fund. And so the Conservation Fund actually took the lead to acquire these tracts, or this 193-acre tract, and with the intention of donating it to the Conservation Commission because we will be adding it to our Mineral Hills Conservation Area. Again, another fantastic tract with a lot of species of conservation concern that we could manage there. And so I offer, Mr. Chairman, for your consideration, the approval recommendation to accept the donation of 193 acres being offered as a donation by the Conservation Fund.
Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Just to clarify, I mean, you mentioned the Conservation Fund in this case, Jennifer. Remind, because I know that with Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation, we've got some programs where we do mitigation for bat habitat, is that?
They actually help with with the administration of an easement
Okay.
that is for mitigation on a pretty I can't remember the acres off the top of my head, but it's a mitigation tract that is, the easement is held and enforced by the Heritage Foundation, but not owned
Okay.
by the Heritage
So
Foundation.
there's a little connectivity here then.
There is a lot of connectivity up in the northeast part of the
Right.
state for bat mitigation
Right, up in the Kirksville.
and habitat
kind of area.
management.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Questions further? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So the last then is to provide for your consideration and approval the naming of our new urban office in St. Louis, the Howard Wood St. Louis Urban Office. We could go into a lot of detail about the contributions that Howard Wood has made over his lifetime to conservation in the state. Again, we've had a lot of time here today. All of that information has been presented for you in your advanced materials, but I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to present that recommendation to name this new facility after Howard.
Motion, please.
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Okay, Mike, you're back up. Like an old penny, right?
Yeah, the old penny, you can't lose it. Good morning again, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. It is my pleasure to present the next 3 agenda items for your consideration. These action items are all recommendations associated with timber sales. Forest management, as you know, helps the department achieve its mission by enhancing terrestrial wildlife habitat, protecting water resources that support aquatic species and recreation, and by sustaining healthy, vigorously growing forests that contribute to local economies, including forest products and tourism. In keeping with established procedures, I have 3 action items for your consideration associated with the sale of forest products. The first action item for your consideration is the sale of timber on Sunklands Conservation Area in Shannon County. This is item 11A on your agenda. I request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 837,940 board feet of timber located on 444 acres of compartment 23 on Sunklands Conservation Area in Shannon County.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The second action item for your consideration is a second timber sale on Sunklands Conservation Area in Shannon County. This is item 11B on your agenda. I request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 554,288 board feet of timber located on 280 acres of compartment 20 on Sunklands Conservation Area in Shannon County.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The third and final action item I have for your consideration is a sale of timber on Current River Conservation Area in Reynolds County. This is item 11C on your agenda. I request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 3,531,258 board feet of timber located on 659 acres of compartment 4 on Current River Conservation Area in Reynolds County.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes the timber recommendations.
Okay,
And with the chair's permission, I'll move forward.
please do.
The Master Conservationist Conservation Hall of Fame Screening Committee met in January to review nominations. It is with great pleasure that I present to you today 3 nominations, 1 for the Master Conservationist Award and 2 for the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame. Details of each individual's accomplishments are provided in your packet. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, at this time, I'd like to provide highlights of these nominations and will ask for commission approval of each one separately.
Yes, sir.
The Master Conservationist Award honors living or deceased citizens conservationists, former commissioners of the Department of Conservation, and employees of conservation-related agencies who made substantial and lasting contributions to fisheries, forestry, or wildlife resources, including conservation law enforcement, conservation education-related activities in our state. To be eligible for consideration or for recognition, the individual nominated must have been a member of the Missouri conservation community who meets at least one of the following criteria: a citizen or former employee of the conservation-related government agency who performed an outstanding act or developed an innovative idea or technique, or whose dedicated service over an extended period resulted in major progress in conservation in Missouri, or a former conservation commissioner who provided outstanding leadership and direction and demonstrated outstanding acts as a citizen in the conservation of fisheries, forestry, or wildlife resources. It is an honor to request commission consideration of the nomination for Mr. Dave Murphy as a Master Conservationist. Mr. Murphy is a tireless promoter and defender of conservation, and he goes to great lengths to build new conservation partnerships and help others learn about nature. For 10 years, Dave served as Executive Director of the Conservation Federation of Missouri, where he had an illustrious and highly successful career initiating and expanding a number of conservation programs in the state, including the Conservation Leadership Corps, Share the Harvest, and the Governor's Youth Turkey Hunt. Over the years, he has advocated for measures to encourage young Missourians' involvement in traditional outdoor activities. One example is youth hunting seasons, which allows adults to give their full attention to upcoming hunters. Dave retired from the Conservation Federation in 2013, but his retirement was short-lived as he accepted Governor Nixon's appointment as a Conservation Commissioner for the same reasons he took the job at the Conservation Federation, to help protect Missouri's unique system of conservation. Mr. Murphy served as a Conservation Commissioner from 2014 to 2019. During his tenure, the department restored numerous species, completed major construction projects, expanded private land and community conservation programs, started new partnerships, advanced education programs, including support for the Boone County Nature Schools, and initiated a major reorganization of the department. Mr. Murphy also worked tirelessly to renew the Parks and Soils tax in 2006 and again in 2016. In 2006, Dave reported that he personally visited all 114 counties in Missouri and made more than 100 talks. In 2016, he was again asked to co-chair the Parks and Soils tax renewal efforts. He, along with many other partners and a supportive citizenry, ensured the tax passed by a historic percentage of nearly 80%. Mr. Chair, I request commission approval to present Dave Murphy with the Master Conservationist Award.
That's a great choice, by the way. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved with.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
No, well done, very deserving.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame honors deceased citizen conservationists who performed outstanding acts or had dedicated service over an extended period of time, which resulted in major progress in fish, forest, and wildlife conservation in our state. Nominees can be former employees of the Department of Conservation and other conservation-related government agencies. The first nomination for consideration for induction into Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame is Mr. Herschel Woody Bledsoe. Mr. Bledsoe began his career 40 years ago with the department as a temporary towerman firefighter in 1942. He then served the forestry division in several capacities before being promoted to a statewide assignment in the latter part of 1951. This consisted of operating a mobile motion picture unit, going to rural schools throughout the state, showing conservation films, and lecturing on wildlife and forestry conservation. Often, he would entertain his audiences with guitar and ballads to emphasize the conservation philosophy and movement in Missouri. In 1953, Mr. Bledsoe formed a country music band from department personnel and produced a pilot show called Woody and the Ozark Smoke Eaters. Although the show was high in entertainment content, Woody used it to preach prevention of forest fires and to sell good wildlife and forestry practices. The pilot show was presented to Department Administration. They were so impressed that they had him produce the show for use on about 25 radio stations throughout the state as a public service. The show was an immediate success and evoked good responses from both the public and the radio stations. Thus, Woody, the singing forester, was born and soon became known statewide. In 1954, Woody was promoted again and transferred to Jefferson City and placed in charge of the radio and TV productions for the department. While continuing the radio series, the format was changed and professional musicians were engaged. Such notables as the late Red Foley, Uncle Si Brassfield, Porter Wagner, Leroy Van Dyke, and many other top artists in the country music field became guests on Woody's show. The show was also expanded into two 13-week series yearly and ran on some 40 radio stations for 20 years. Meanwhile, additional duties were assigned to Woody. He was placed in charge of the department's exhibit program in 1957. During this period, Woody became the voice of Smokey the Bear in Missouri and made hundreds of personal appearances with an animated Smokey at county fairs throughout the state. In addition, Woody became a much sought-after speaker for civic organizations and sportsmen's clubs and presented hundreds of school assembly programs statewide. Even with all of this activity to keep him busy, Woody began producing and hosting a 30-minute TV show on Channel 8 in Columbia called Missouri Outdoors in the early 60s. The show was moved to Channel 13 in Jefferson City in 1970 and aired until 2007. Woody's radio shows, TV shows, exhibits, and publications won 20 international awards from the Association of Conservation Information. This association is comprised of information and education sections of state, federal, and provincial conservation agencies throughout the United States and Canada. These were prestigious awards, and Woody's productions placed first, second, and third consistently, which not only reflected well on his ability, but was a contributing factor in making the Missouri Department of Conservation recognized as one of the best in the nation. Mr. Chairman, I request Commission approval to induct Mr. Herschel Woody Bledsoe into the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame.
You have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I understand that his son and daughter are here.
Joel Vance, the last one.
What?
Joel Vance.
I was going to talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
It's getting a lot late
You
in the
voted on the wrong one.
You've been in trouble all day.
Yeah, one more.
Just not my day.
Mr. Chair, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll
Please,
get out of this
Mike,
one way
yes.
or another. The second nomination for consideration for induction into the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame is Mr. Joel Vance. Mr. Vance's outstanding contributions are chronicled in the Missouri Conservationist, for which he wrote from his hiring on April 1st of 1969 until after his 1991 retirement. Over the years of his employment, Mr. Vance contributed to the department by being the highly respected and widely heard voice of conservation in the state, giving talks on behalf of the department, conducting seminars and workshops, and helping establish a public affairs section within the agency. Most notably, he wrote The Design for Conservation, which established a sales tax in 1976. The entire issue of the August 1975 Conservationist was written by Mr. Vance, detailing the program that would propel Missouri Department of Conservation to the top of all conservation agencies nationwide. Writing The Design for Conservation created a framework for the funding and emphasized sales tax, but the bulk of Joel's department career included writing about, photographing for, and participating in conservation efforts for the monthly Missouri Conservationist magazine. However, this only hints at his significance to the North American conservation movement. In addition to thousands of news stories and magazines, articles written for the department, Mr. Vance produced an abundance of freelance articles and monthly columns for every major hunting, fishing, conservation magazine in America, including Audubon, Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, and Sports Field. He authored many books about conservation topics of all kinds, which showcased his wit, humor, and love of conservation efforts. While Joel prolifically wrote hundreds of articles for The Conservationist and thousands of news releases, as well as freelancing for 60 years, he was also deeply involved in the conservation movement, serving as president and chairman of the board of directors of the Outdoor Writers Association of America and the Missouri Outdoor Communicators, as well as an active member of the Association of Conservation Information, the Southeastern Outdoor Press Association, and the Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Writers. His work earned him scores of awards, including all three of the Outdoor Writers Association of America's honorary awards for service, conservation, and writing excellence. He is one of only 3 members to ever be awarded all top 3 awards from that organization. Former editor of the Missouri Conservationist, Kathy Love, said in support of Mr. Vance's nomination, "Joel Vance used words to transform the state, its natural resources, and the attitudes of its citizens. His writing spanned generations. I grew up reading the articles in the Missouri Conservationist magazine. My father and grandfather were fans of his as well. Joel wrote with humor, insight, scientific integrity, and a deep understanding of the natural world and its value to humanity. Mr. Chairman, I request Commission approval to induct Mr. Joel Vance into the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame."
You have a motion to that effect? And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And I understand, even though Mr. Bledsoe's children were not able to make it, Joel Vance's son and daughter are here. And so please stand if you would.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Presentations of these awards will be at a future Conservation Commission meeting or an appropriate event when we can schedule them. We will recognize all of them and their families when we can make it work out.
Thank you, Mike.
bet.
Sure appreciate it.
Well
Next
done.
up, Aaron, talk about politics.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yep, I had to check that clock there real quick. Yeah, I'm going to be quick because Nichols has baseball today down in Ozark. So, I just have to say, Commissioners, absolutely wonderful presentations today. You see the expertise, the passion of our staff. I'm always amazed that Andy can get up here and tell us that the pintails are going to land on the 53rd parallel in Canada. I mean, that's just the amount of detail that our staff go into. And then to have, on top of that, 3 wonderful nominations with Dave Murphy, Bledsoe, and Joel Vance. Both Amy and Andy are close friends of mine. They grew up around conservation just like I did. They were constantly highlighted in their dad's story. Just wonderful to have them here today as well. So good to see you guys back there. But right now we're 7 weeks away from the end of session. The great thing about that is 3 of those weeks occurred during turkey season. So we're looking forward to that. Right now, the big thing is working on the budget. Normally, the fiscal year budget would be over in the Senate and we'd be working through the process of markup over there. The House hasn't even started markup yet. We are expecting that they will start markup next week, potentially take the bill to the House floor next week as well. And then actually only leave the Senate with 4 weeks to actually finish the bill, then go to conference. So it's really going to be some late nights the next couple of weeks as we work through both the House and the Senate. As the director indicated, several of our projects have been stripped out on the ARPA front. Some of that money was given to Department of Ag for avian influenza. Pretty sure the ARPA money can't be used for that purpose, so I think we'll have a pretty good chance of getting some of that funding back as we work through the legislative process. We're well past the last day of filing bills, so generally if a bill hasn't switched chambers by this point, it doesn't have much of a chance of passing. And with the turmoil that we've seen in the Senate, we haven't had any bills that we are tracking switch chambers at this point. But just to highlight, we are tracking HJR 134, which is the Appropriation Authority bill dealing with the Department of Transportation and Department of Conservation. That was voted out of committee this week. The committee chair and who is also the bill sponsor offered an amendment to take the Department of Conservation out, so we don't apply to that bill anymore. HJR 107, which would expand the commission to 8 elected commissioners, has been on the House calendar for a while and is just sitting there at this point. The same would be with HJR 82, which is the right to hunt. Some other legislation, Senate Bill 1035 and House Bill 1694. Those are all related to landowner privileges, the landowner application process, the 5 to 20 acre changes. Those bills have rather stalled out at this point. They've either haven't had a hearing or they're sitting in a committee. House Bill 2612 is related to use of game cameras by law enforcement. That bill is just sitting in place as well. But we are cautiously watching that one because of a recent court decision in Tennessee. So that might see a little action here as we progress through session. Senate Bill 1223 was filed on the last day of filing. That would provide free hunting and fishing permits for all veterans. That would have an enormous fiscal impact to the agency, well over $5 million annually. We already have a ton of discounts and programs and opportunities for veterans. And so I think we're in a good spot with that. Obviously, that is unconstitutional, but we'll be working with the bill sponsor to make sure they understand the true implications of their legislation. House Bill 2898, or Max's Law, prohibits the feeding of deer in urban areas. That was filed on the last day of session. And on the fun side, we saw legislation filed on the last day that would create an official day for black bears and Hellbender Awareness Days, and then mark March 1st as the official opening day of trout season. So looking forward to getting through the next 7 weeks. If there aren't any questions, we'll move on.
No,
Questions?
no. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks,
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Meeting adjourned. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.